The dawn mist clung to the riverlands like a shroud, muffling the crunch of frost-stiff grass beneath Arya's boots. She kept her eyes lowered, remembering Yoren's growled warning about looking foes in the face. But every new sound in the gray hush made her heart stutter. A cartwheel creaked behind her, dragging its wooden moan across the chill air. Somewhere ahead, Hot Pie's anxious breathing puffed like a bellows. She tightened her fingers on the rough leather strap of the satchel that hid Needle, and tried to imagine herself all hollow, too empty to hold fear. Even hollow things break. The first arrow hissed out of the fog, planted itself in the trunk of a willow no more than a yard to her right, and quivered there like an accusing finger. Gendry cursed. A second shaft thudded into the cart's sideboard. Horses screamed. Down, Yoren bellowed, voice thunder over the meager company. He spun, blade flashing, and Arya dropped to her knees, clutching the satchel to her chest. The fog erupted with mailed riders. Lannister crimson bled through the white murk, and suddenly Arya felt the color everywhere. On the banners, splashed across shields like fresh wounds gleaming on their polished helms. She had known this battle would come, but knowing a storm is coming does not brace a body for the first crack of lightning. Gendry dragged her behind the cart's axle as steel clashed on steel. Their huddled cluster of knights watched recruits scattered. Pip slipped, skidding on frost, and a mounted knight leaned from his saddle to slash. Pip shrieked. Something warm speckled Arya's cheek, and she would have retched if there'd been time. Yoren fought like a man made of oak. Heavy, rooted, almost ancient, but there were 5 for every swing of his sword, and one by one they closed around him as vines climb a tree. Arya's lungs burned. She should flee. Any other plan felt like waiting to drown. But the riders spilled in both directions, hemming them between willow trunks and the muddy ribbon of the river. From somewhere came Lami's whimper, growing higher, thinner, until it snapped off altogether. Easy little rats. The voice that broke through the clash was mellow, almost patient. Even in the half-light, Arya saw the richness of his cloak. The ring worked in the crest of his breastplate. A golden lion rampant. Sir Kevan Lannister? No. Kevan would be older. This knight's beard held no gray. Throw down what weapons you have. Lord Tywin wants prisoners who can talk. Yoren spat, lifted his sword again, but the point of a spear plunged through his shoulder, pinning him to the wheel. The old man's knees buckled. Hot Pie screamed something wordless. Arya could not remember leaving the shadow of the cart. 1 second she was crouched. Next, she darted forward, fingers wrapping the hilt of a fallen dagger slick with blood. She slashed at the air as if it were hung with invisible foes, wild and fast and silent. A mailed gauntlet closed around her wrist. "Well now," said the man who caught her, surprise brightening his pale eyes. He eased the dagger from her hand, as though disarming a small child, yet kept hold of her wrist with measured firmness. "Where did you learn that?" Arya bit his thumb. The knight grunted, shaking her like a terrier shakes a rat until her teeth unclamped and a copper tang filled her mouth. "Enough." He yanked her hood back. The messy brown tangle of her hair spilled free, too long, too soft to be any boy's. She felt the entire world still. "You've taken a girl for your recruit, Crow?" The knight called over to where Yoren sagged. Cheats seldom prosper. Yoren's eyes were glassing, but his voice remained the scrape of iron. "Touch her and burn in 7 hells." Tsk. The knight sighed. The gods decide who burns. He beckoned 2 riders. "Bind the lot. We'll let Lord Tywin choose." "Bikawan." They rode under guard for 3 days. Chains linked wrists in pairs. Arya's iron manacles were too loose, so her captors wound a greasy cloth between the metal and her small bones to keep her from slipping free. She was yoked to Gendry, whose long stride forced her into half-trotting to match. Whenever she stumbled, he eased back, slowing enough that the guards muttered to hurry but never struck him. She glimpsed the bruise blooming beneath the brim of his peasant's cap, where the butt of a spear had kissed his temple. Neither spoke of Yoren. Neither dared. The riverlands wept cold rain that turned roads to porridge. Crows watched from naked branches, feathers slicked black as ink. Twice they passed farmsteads left charred, And once Arya saw a mother's skeleton folded over a smaller one in a doorway, ribs interlaced like the fingers of praying hands. She tried not to look. She tried not to smell. But the stink of death is a truth no shutter, no blindfold can wholly bar. On the fourth dawn, Harrenhal rose to greet them, those scorched, gnarled towers clawing at the sky, lakes of cinder stone pooled between them like the footprints of giants. Moon-pale mist licked at its parapets. She had heard old Nan's tales of Harren's folly, of Balerion the Black Dread melting stone into pudding. But the ruin in flesh outshone even story's gloom. A place burned beyond death, yet forced to keep breathing. The gatehouse devoured them. Inside, torchlight painted the passage in stripes of orange and terry black. The air smelled of wet ash and boiling fat. Arya shivered despite the warmth pressing in from all sides. Their escort dismounted in a muddy bailey, herded prisoners into a crooked line. Men with flails lounged nearby like bored tavern bulls. A clerk hurried forward, quill twitching above a ledger. One by one, names were barked. When they reached her and Gendry, the clerk paused. "Boy," he said, glancing up at Gendry. "Name, age, trade?" The plume scratched. "Gendry. Smith's apprentice. Good steel for Harrenhal's forges. Next." He looked at Arya, quill poised. "And this ragged runt?" Gendry's muscles gathered under his torn doublet. "My brother," he blurted. "Lummy's dead," Arya cut in. The lie startled even her. Lamplight iced the clerk's ink-spotted spectacles. "I didn't ask who died, girl." He sniffed. "Name? Ari?" She swallowed. "No trade." A guard leaned near the clerk's ear, whispering. Arya caught only fragments. "Nymeria? Wolf's blood." The clerk's quill froze in midair. "This one." He rapped the ledger's spine against his palm. "Lord Tywin will wish to examine this one himself." They placed her in a chamber too grand for any common captive, yet too small to call a hall. A circular room walled with tapestries faded to bruise blue. The ceiling lost in descending shadow. A single window slit, bled gray light, across a trestle table cluttered with parchments, uncapped inkpots, and a jug of dark wine. Guards stationed outside shut the iron-bound door with the heavy finality of a tomb lid. Arya stood at the center, rain-soaked and shivering, her manacles now replaced by a silken cord that bit her skin no less cruelly. Time stretched until her knees began to tremble. She would not sit. She would not weep. She counted breaths first in pairs, then fours, then eights. And when numbers blurred, she recited the names: Joffrey, Cersei, Ilyn Payne, Meryn Trant, until each syllable tasted like a whetstone in her mouth. The door opened without sound. Tywin Lannister crossed the threshold like a shadow made flesh, close-cut hair as pale as unsheathed steel. His eyes, golden and cool, flicked over her in one sweep that seemed to measure more than height or weight. Something deeper, as if he were tallying value. He removed his gloves, laying them beside the parchments, and for a long moment, only the sigh of the fire in the corner disturbed the hush. "You are Arya Stark of Winterfell." His words were not a question. The name cracked open inside her like a secret too ripe to hide, but she forced her face still. "I'm Arya." A single brow arched. "You may persist in that pretense while it amuses you. It will not amuse me long." He poured wine unhurried. "I require honesty. In war, deception is common coin, but every counterfeit must be weighed against its worth." He offered the second cup to her across the table. Arya stared. "Poison. If I chose to kill you, child, you would already be dead." She stepped forward, took the cup. Though her knees trembled so fiercely she feared spilling. The wine smelled of cherries, far lovelier than the dregs Yoren once shared from a skin. She did not taste it. Tywin studied her as one might a puzzle piece suddenly recognizable. "Your father was a man of honor. It is a thing men speak of even now." Lord Eddard's iron sense of right. The faintest crease deepened beside his eye. "Do you inherit it, I wonder? Some claim honor is passed by blood, like the curve of a nose. "He was more honorable than your king," Arya said before terror could leash her tongue. Tywin's chuckle was as thin as parchment. "King Joffrey is a product of many hands, as are we all." He sipped wine. "Yet it is not Joffrey who holds you now, but me. Honor, Lady Arya, is useful in a hostage." The word hostage struck like a slap. She pictured Robb in his wolfskin cloak, sword raised above a field of fallen shields, too far to hear her scream. Tywin set his goblet down. "You will be treated according to your station. Your meals will be hot, your chamber secure, your safety assured. In return, you will obey. If you attempt escape, if you slay any servant, guard, or guest, if you force my hand in ways unseemly, punishments will be tailored not to your body." His gaze flickered, deliberate, but to those less prepared to endure pain. "Do you comprehend?" Arya's fists tightened until nails carved crescents in her palms. "Robb won't bow. Perhaps he shall not." Tywin's voice softened, the way silk can soften the bite of chains. "Yet all men possess pressure points. Never underestimate a general's love for the lives beneath his banner. Your brother's wolves may snap their jaws at truce, but they will howl when their cub is threatened." Arya kept her eyes on the scorch-scarred floorboards. If she met his gaze, she knew something inside her would fracture. Tywin turned, summoned a servant with a gesture. "Bath her, feed her, dress her suitably. I will speak with her again on the morrow." He paused at the threshold, looking back at Arya as though seeing the shape of battles yet unbloomed. "And child, be certain I have no wish to harm you. My war is not with little girls. Power requires precision." When the door closed, Arya's breath shuddered out in a sound almost like a sob. But she caught it in her teeth, swallowed it whole. She looked down. Her cup still trembled in her grip, dark wine sloshing against gold. That night she dreamed Needle was sleeping in straw beside a blacksmith's anvil, lonely and cold, whispering for her to wake. Day followed day like footfalls, echoing down an endless corridor. Arya learned the schedule of Harrenhal's beating heart, the bell that tolled at dawn to rouse the forges, the midday horn calling sentries off the walls, the clang of the kitchen's cauldrons at dusk. She ate at a small wooden table in her cell, though they insisted on calling it the Maiden's Suite, servants hovering like moths. They placed a comb of polished bone on her dresser, linens that smelled of mint. They dared ask nothing. But walls have cracks. Through one such fissure, Arya heard talk in the servants' corridor. Whispers that the mountain had been summoned from the burning of the God's Eye villages to serve Lord Tywin. The name made every candle gutter in her lungs. What if Gregor Clegane had Gendry? She imagined his great gloved fist wrapped around Gendry's thick neck, squeezing. Baelish stung her throat. At night, she knelt beside her narrow bed, not to pray but to listen to the silence, marking the guard's rotation beyond her door. 2 changed at the second candle, 2 more at the fourth. Each bootfall, each cough, became a bead on a string of possibilities. If she found Needle, and she would, she could slip under the bed, wedge between wall and chest, wait until the 4th rotation, and to carve escape, one must first sharpen hope. Tywin called for her on the 7th day. She was taken not to the tapestry room, but a vast hall where banners drooped like tired tongues from rafters. A long map table sprawled under clusters of small carved lions and wolves and trout, each piece marking regiments in the endless dance of war. Sunlight vined with dust slanted from clerestory windows, netting the tabletop in gold. Beside Tywin stood a dwarf half swallowed by quilted sable. His mismatched eyes studied Arya with sharp, almost playful interest. "My son, Tyrion." Tywin gestured. "Hand of the king." Tyrion bowed at the waist. "A pleasure, Lady Stark. I see my father has provided more comfortable attire than Night's Watch rags." Arya said nothing. She wore a gown of green samite embroidered with leaves so real she felt dew on her skin. The fit chafed. She missed the anonymity of tunic and hose. Tywin moved, a lion piece. "We discuss River Run." He flicked a glance at Arya. Your uncle commands it. Sir Edmure holds for House Tully, Tyrion supplied, smiling. Yet father hopes your cousin, the Lady Catelyn's niece, may persuade him toward parley. Blood is persuasive currency. Arya flashed, unthinking. My mother will never let you use her family. Never. Tyrion tilted his head. That is such a certain word. My experience of families is rather more fluid. Nuntarendaru. Tywin's hand covered the wolf carved from dark Iroquois. Suppose this wolf were removed. He plucked it off the map, set it beside Arya on the table's rim. Suppose every other piece shifted accordingly. What then of triangles of supply, of siege engines left without quarry, of rivers not crossed? A single piece can reorder kingdoms. Arya stared at the tiny wooden wolf. A sliver of grain ran through its flank like a wound. She wondered if Robb's ribs felt such lines of fragility beneath mail. Tywin regarded her. I require you, child, not only as hostage but as symbol. You will write to your brother. Tell him you remain alive, in comfort, yet in peril should he choose to ignore the terms I will soon deliver. His voice rolled across the hall as quiet as falling ash. Tell him I have given you my word, that no harm will befall you while he considers. And if I refuse, the question slipped before she weighed its cost. Tyrion's brows rose, amused. Then we shall be forced to forge a letter of our own, less reassuring. A raven quill lay beside parchment. Arya lifted it. Her hand trembled, and ink spattered like tiny broken wings across the margin. She wrote Robb and stopped. Tywin waited. The hall filled with the scrape of distant armor, the groan of a tower beam settling. At last Arya wrote, I am alive. They feed me like a lady. They dress me like a Tully bride. But I am no Lady Robb, and I will never be bride to lions. Come for me. She set the quill down. Tywin read. The faintest muscle tightened in his jaw. Seal it, he said. Send it north, by fastest rider. Tyrion fixed Arya with a look half pity, half admiration. That was not precisely the reassurance requested. Father should perhaps have explained the meaning of obedience more plainly. Tywin signaled a guard. Take Lady Arya to the God's Wood. The God's Wood, Tyrion echoed. Even captives require prayer. Tywin's eyes, molten brass, locked on Arya's. Let her bargain with her old gods. The Weirwood's silence may instruct her. The Godswood of Harrenhal crouched in the castle's heart, like an orphaned ghost. Flames had scarred many trunks, yet the Weirwood remained untouched, white bark splashed with the dried blood red of leaves. Its carved face had melted when Balerian's fire licked stone. So the eyes were warped hollows, the mouth a downward distortion of sorrow. Mist lay in soft riots between the roots. Arya knelt before the tree, chains clinking softly. The guards withdrew to the perimeter, out of earshot, but never out of sight. She looked up at the Weirwood's knotted visage. Father, she thought. I'm sorry. I lost Nymeria. I lost Needle. The ache of that loss shivered through her bones. Wah, what would you do? Wan, wind whispered, shifting leaves. She almost heard words in that rustle. North, snow, packed. But when she leaned closer, only silence greeted her. She pressed her palm to the tree's pale bark. It felt warm, as if the old gods themselves stirred beneath its skin. I will escape, she whispered aloud. And when I do, I will kill them. Every name on my list, starting with the lion who put a noose around my brother's armies. She breathed the vow in deeper than breath itself. The Weirwood's sap-red leaves trembled. Behind her, someone cleared his throat. Arya spun, heart hammering. The guards remained at distance. Before her stood a man neither guard nor servant. He wore the dark, fine robes of maitre d'coin, perhaps, or steward. Yet his face was not one she recognized. Hair the color of ashes brushed his shoulders. His eyes were a calm gray, unremarkable, save for their profound stillness. I beg pardon, he said, voice soft as cat's fur. I disturbed your prayer. Arya straightened. Who are you? A boy once, a man now, a servant to many faces. He glanced at the looming weirwood as if greeting an equal. You have fierce gods, little wolf. But some gods answer more swiftly than others. The cadence of his words pricked her memory. You were in the cage, she realized. On the cart with the other criminals. He smiled. A cage is a cage, whether built of iron or oath. My name is Jaqen Har. He bowed. And you, Arya Stark, are but newly caged. But cages have keys. Arya's pulse quickened. Do you have one? A key. A word. A debt. He touched his chest. 3 lives were saved by you. Mine and 2 others. The Red God is owed 3 lives in return. Name 3, and the debt is paid. Her heart stumbled. 3 lives. She saw Lami, arrow pierced. Yoren, spear skewered. The mountain's shadow looming. Can you kill Lord Tywin Lannister? She whispered. Jaqen's gaze never flinched. A man can kill any other man. Yet timing, opportunity, witness, these forge shackles sturdier than steel. Lord Tywin is watched by many eyes, and his death would bring ruin down these walls. A dead lion may crush the wolf beneath him in falling. Arya chewed her lip. Then, Amory Lorch. He had killed Yoren. He deserved it. A girl has named one. Jaqen dipped his head. It will be done. When? A man has duties. He turned as if to leave. Arya grabbed his sleeve. Wait. Wait. Does it count if he dies in battle? I need him dead here. Bestumtas. Jaqen laughed. Gentle. Death is death. The manner is but sound and color. Trust, little wolf. He slipped away through mist, no heavier than breath, and vanished among the blackened trunks. Arya stared at the spot he had stood until her knees numbed. Then she rose, dusted dew from her skirts and walked back toward the guards. In her chest, something fierce had unfurled its wings. Not hope exactly, but hunger shaped like hope, sharpened by vengeance. That night, Harrenhal woke to screams. Arya, lying sleepless on linen pillows, heard the clatter of boots, the thud of fists on doors. She slid from bed, padded to the door, pressed her ear. Voices shouted, sirens of chaos. By torchlight, she found the latch unbolted. They had grown careless, believing silk ribbons, sufficient manacles. She slipped into the hallway. Torch brands tilted and smoked, flaring shadows across cracked stone. Servants swarmed like ants disturbed. Ser Amory found, in the rookery, gods, the smell. Arya's heart hammered. She ducked behind a column as a pair of guards ran past, faces pale. She followed at distance, through a maze of corridors spiraling upward until they stopped before a narrow wooden door. Beyond, a flock of ravens beat themselves against lattice windows, keening. Amory Lorch lay crooked on the flagstones, head turned at a wrong angle, eyes staring without lids. His tongue protruded, black as rotten fruit. Around his neck ligature marks marred the skin, thin, neat as if stitched by tailor's hands. No blood painted the floor, yet she smelled death spice thick as stew. One life, paid. Arya retreated before they noticed the small shadow flicker past stacked crates. She fled downstairs, heart ricocheting. Back in her chamber she closed the door, leaning against it until her breath steadied. One name crossed out. 2 remain. Tywin summoned her at dawn. He stood rigid beside the corpse now stretched on a trestle atop canvas. Servants scrubbing at unseen stains in the ancient stones. Sunlight trapped the gold threads of his doublet until he seemed armored in molten ore. A tragedy, he said, meaning anything but grief. Arya watched him. Careful. Ser Emery's death will be felt. Tywin's gaze swept her. Some men mistake fear for loyalty. It is a costly error. Let him see. She met his eyes. Costly for him. A muscle along Tywin's jaw flickered. You will henceforth remain under heavier guard. I see now Harrenhal has cracks through which serpents creep. He turned to leave, paused. Keep yourself safe, Lady Arya. The realm has few innocents left. Even fewer worth preserving. She returned to her chamber escorted by 4 guards in gleaming half-plate. Yet as the door shut, the same hush settled, thick enough to sculpt. In that hush, Arya tasted a glimmer of power. She had chosen, and death had obeyed. Days crawled. Letters came and went by raven from the twins, from King's Landing, from the camps along Red Fort. Tywin spent hours bent over maps, wolves pressing from the west, Freys hemming from the east. Arya watched from shadows, absorbing names. Sir Rickard Karstark, raiding supply trains, Roose Bolton marching south by southeast, the Blackfish carving river, paths to free Wheatfield. War was a spinning dagger, point tipped on the hinge of supply. In the kitchens she made allies of scullions. Hot pie, set to knead dough, slipped her crust heels thick with drippings. Gendry labored the bellows in the forges, sweat outlining every muscle against orange glow. She counted guards, exits, ventilation grates. She learned the cadence of bellows' breath like an old lullaby. Then one afternoon she heard the mountain had arrived. Gregor Clegane's progress through the courtyard left silence pooled like old blood at his heels. Even Lannister men looked away as he passed. He spoke brief, guttural orders, and within hours rumor spread. He would command torture squads rooting rebel sympathizers. That night, Arya dreamed again of Needle. This time, the blade whispered from a barrel under the armory stairs. When she woke, she knew, not believed, but knew, where it lay. Stealing became possible 3 nights later, during a feast to honor Lord Amory's memory. Tywin dined with captains, while drunk crossbowmen sang discordant odes in the lower hall. Guards at Arya's door snored into flagons of wine, left by a careless cellar boy. She eased the latch. Moonlight stroked the flagstone's silver. She slipped along archways. Heart a fluttering sparrow? At each turn, she repeated Yoren's mantra. Left, right, left, keep to wall. Breath low. A spiral stair led to the armory's underbelly. The smell of iron filings and fire-quenched metal guided her. She found the barrel where memory's dream had buried Needle. Fingers dug through burlap sacks of nails. Elbows scraped wood, until steel kissed her hand. She drew the thin blade free. Its edge caught moonlight like cold flame. Tears blurred her sight. Needle fit her palm as if it had never left. A sound behind. A soft exhale. She spun, blade poised. Gendry stood in the doorway, face all shadow, breath steaming. I followed. He raised both hands. Saw you leave. His eyes dropped to the sword. You found it. She nodded. For a moment neither spoke. We can run, she whispered. Tonight. There's a postern gate seldom watched. Gendry shook his head. They'd hunt us with dogs. You, maybe, but not me, too big. We'll find horses. They'll hear. And the mountain's men ride night and day. He stepped closer, voice low as banked coals. Robb Stark's winning battles. If Tywin keeps you breathing, they'll trade. Arya opened her mouth to argue when a clamor exploded above, shouts, steel ringing stone. Gendry grabbed her wrist, pulled her behind an anvil. Footsteps hammered the stair. 3 guards charged in, helms askew, swords drawn. She's loose, one barked. Search every corner. Gendry pushed her through a side door into a passage no wider than 2 men abreast. They ran. Shadows leaping ahead. Needle's point flicked with each stride, guiding her like a compass. At the corridor's end a grated window overlooked the godswood. Bars thick as a wrist thwarted escape. But Arya pressed her face to the cool iron. Beyond, the weirwood glimmered red under full moon. Leaves rustling secrets. Boots clattered behind. Gendry pulled her back. No way. Footfalls neared. Arya swallowed. I have 2 names left, she murmured. Tywin and the mountain. Pick the mountain. She nodded once. Back in her cell, they chained her ankle to the bedpost, posted 2 guards inside the room. Tywin came not that night nor the next, but on the 3rd, his patience evidently frayed thin as gossamer. He clasped his hands behind his back, surveying the chain. Was it worth it? Arya met his stare. She thought of Jaqen, of debt, of the mountain's shadow. Ask Amory Lorch. Tywin's eye narrowed. For the first time, She saw uncertainty flicker there, like a moth brushing a candle flame. He left without another word. She slept dreamless, a stone at the river's bed. When dawn bled pale along the horizon, Harrenhal shuddered again under screams. This time, the terror rose rawer, wilder, as if the castle itself had been flayed. Guards thundered past her door. She pressed to the jamb, listening. Sir Gregor. Head. Only the head. God spare us. Arya's skin prickled. Within the hour, Lord Tywin's army began packing. Banners furled. Supply wagons rolled. The man himself stalked through corridors, barking commands. Harrenhal briefly became a kicked anthill. Tyrion found her just before departure, a set of keys jingling. He unlocked her chain. My father rides east to confront your brother's outriders. You ride with us, of course. What happened to the mountain? Her voice sounded too calm. An unfortunate mishap, Tyrion said dryly. His head parted company with his shoulders during the night. Arya swallowed. How? Father suspects poison, though I'd wager steel. One can misplace anything in these halls, except blame. Tyrion's eyes gleamed as though amused by a jest only he could hear. 2 dead lions in as many fortnights. Someone, somewhere, enjoys a grisly sense of accounting. He handed her a cloak of Lannister crimson. Wear this, and do try not to kill anyone on horseback. It startles the mounts. Arya followed him into the courtyard where columns of riders assembled. She looked back once at Harrenhal's twisted spires. Smoke curled from forged chimneys, gray on gray, like ghosts climbing skyward. In her mind, a new list began to write itself, not in blood or ink, but in the quiet promise of steel. One debt remains. Needle, hidden beneath her cloak, seemed to hum against her ribs, a heartbeat separate from her own. And the road, long and red, with wars yet unspilled, unrolled before her like a challenge whispered by the wind. Omja. The first soft tremor of dawn had not yet shaken the horizon when the Lannister camp broke. Night fires guttered in shallow pits, licking last scraps of blackened log, while the army transformed itself from sleeping beast to marching machine. Quiet orders rippled down the muddy lanes between pavilions. Lash that crate, shoe that mule, see the casks stowed neat beneath canvas. No trumpets brayed, for Tywin Lannister believed noise wasted strength, as did delay. By the time a pale amber rim glimmered in the east, 3,000 men-at-arms already stood in ordered files, their horses breathing clouds into the chill. Arya waited near the center column, crimson cloak clasped at her throat, needle hidden against her ribs. The cloak's dyed wool rasped with each heartbeat. She had cut 2 finger-length slits in the lining during the night, just wide enough for a slender blade to slip through in silence. If the guards noticed, none remarked. They were hulking Western men in fluted plate, more comfortable swinging morning stars than minding girls. And if they did see, perhaps they expected needles in ladies' gowns, the way fleas lived in straw. Irritating, inevitable, too small to bother with a boot heel. Tyrion Lannister approached on a piebald gelding scarcely taller than a stubborn mule. Saddle and reins were gilded for a prince. The dwarf rode them with the mild resignation of a man forced to wear a jester's cap, because none other fits. He reined close, studying Arya with an expression pitched somewhere between curiosity and warning. You look unwell, he said. Travel sits poorly on you? On anyone chained between lions, Arya answered. The collar around her neck was no thicker than a bracelet, loose enough not to chafe, yet a polished steel ring hung at the throat, and from that ring a length of silvered chain trailed to the saddle of the knight beside her. That night, Sir Benford Brax never spoke beyond what duty required, but he held her tether like a hawker keeps a gerfalcon's leash. Firm, impersonal, always aware a hooked beak might cut his thumb. Tyrion's mismatched eyes tracked the chain. My father claims it is ornament, not imprisonment. And does a bird fly better when the leash is silver? Some birds learn impatience brings broken wings. Tyrion sighed, face softening. Do not mistake me for the ironsmith, Lady Arya. I'd sooner see you free than trust. But political knots tighten of their own will. Then, challenge. She looked away, across the camp. Tywin, the smith of those knots, rode along the vanguard, plate gleaming dull gold, cloak of red damask swirling about the crupper of his coursier. He did not shout. He had no need. Momentary gaps in a rank's alignment closed the instant his gaze brushed them, exactly as ripples settle on a moat once wind drops. One could imagine Harrenhal's towers rising in perfect new symmetry, merely because Lord Tywin looked upon the ruin and found it displeasing. "Where do we ride?" Arya asked, forcing calm into every syllable. "East by south," Tyrion replied. "Lord Tully's scouts cut the train near Maidenpool. Father intends to show them his displeasure." He flicked mud from his glove. "We shall cross the Trident at Breakback Ford, no swollen freshet this late in autumn, and take the high road toward Duskendale. Supply lines grow unwieldy as tails, best to prune before they drag the beast down." He spoke like a man lecturing on trade routes, but Arya heard another meaning. Robb Stark's wolves must eat. Burn their fodder, they starve. Starve the men, the boy king kneels. Tyrion seemed to pick threads from her silence. "My sister sits the Iron Throne. She whispers that the North bleeds redder each week, that your brother's victories crumble on the wind like frost flowers come sunrise. Do you believe her?" Arya's mouth tasted copper. She pictured Robb astride his gray direwolf banner, turning the world dire and gray, and shield-locking black woods and old stones behind him. She had to believe. "My brother is the young wolf. Lions fear wolves at night." "Indeed," Tyrion said dryly. "Night howls, day devours. Yet still, the lion keeps his pride." He angled his gelding away. "Stay close to Sir Benford, and do not tighten the chain if you can help it. Horses dislike sudden jerks." She almost laughed. What use? Caution now? Then she remembered the reed-thin blade pressed to her ribs and sobered. Horses disliked many things. One lion in particular would dislike a point through his throat. The column lurched forward. Hoofs clopped on packed earth, siege wagons groaned. Banners swished. Harrenhal's scorched parapets dwindled behind a drifting lace of wood smoke, and sunrise flared, pale and watery, over the eastern wetlands. Arya Stark, last living daughter of Lord Eddard, marched under crimson and gold toward a battlefield where she would be hostage, bargaining chip or corpse, unless the third debt ended first. Jaqen had left no sign since the mountain's death. She searched each campfire and supply cart for the gray-haired Lorathi, but only strangers answered her gaze. Perhaps he walked among shield-bearers in stolen mail, face changed to a sellsword's blunt features. Perhaps he rode, finely dressed, as a scribe to Maester Crelin. Or perhaps he had slipped away like smoke after paying 2 lives, leaving her to settle the last herself. If so, she would pay it gladly. Needle rested beneath her heart, whispering its litany. Stick them with the pointy end. Remember. Remember. The first day's march covered 12 miles. The army halted near a ruinous sept, walls half toppled by some forgotten skirmish, but its dome still stood, jade tiles glinting under cloud. Camp followers scurried to claim dry ground within the broken cloisters. Laundresses with baskets, smith's lads dragging hearth bellows, a ragged puppet troupe hoping to earn pennies with bawdy verse. Guards drove iron stakes, tethering mounts. Cooks set cauldrons over trenches spit-licked by pine kindling. Arya's chain anchored her tent side, close enough that Tywin's pavilion loomed like a red silk fortress 20 paces distant, yet far enough that common soldiers could pretend she was mere freight. A stable boy brought her oat porridge and a heel of rye. She pretended to eat, letting the gruel cool to paste while she watched the camp's lattice of movement. The pacing of sentries along cordon ropes, the switch change at second glass, the moment 2 halberdiers paused to piss behind a supply wagon, leaving the northeast quarter unobserved for 8 slow breaths. She counted again. 8. Tiny. Noted. That night, rain hushed the tents. A fine drumming whisper that soaked canvas and cloaked sound. Arya lay wakeful, color iron cold upon her skin. Benford Brax had parked himself on a camp chair just outside her tent flap, snoring under a hooded lantern. The chain lay slack as a snake across damp grass. She watched it glimmer when the lantern gusted, imagined the faintest scrape of file tooth along silver. If she had file, she had needle. It would saw, eventually. Yet if the collar cracked, Brax would stir. His visor-swaddled helm sat on his lap, gauntlets on his belt. Man-at-arms like him needed no breath to kill a girl. Her hand caressed the hilt beneath cloak's lining, found comfort in the quiet promise of edge, then withdrew. Not tonight. Patience, sharpen hope. Morning fog pooled thick as curdled milk. The army broke camp before dawn again, tramping through wet grass beaded with spiderweb, silver. Sparrows burst from hedges disturbed by marching feet. Somewhere far to the south a corncrake rasped its mournful call. They passed villages abandoned, shutter planks nailed over doorways. Pigs rooted in gardens gone wild, unaware their masters fled or perished. By midday, they forded a tributary of the Trident so shallow men walk thigh-deep, scabbards held overhead. Arya shivered atop a roan palfrey loaned her by Tyrion. He claimed distance was kinder on horseback, but wet trouser legs clung cold to her calves, and she missed the rough warmth of Nymeria's fur with a pang so fierce it pricked tears behind her eyes. Pain kept them from falling. She remembered father saying that once. Winterfell's stone will hurt you if you stumble on the steps. That hurt teaches caution. Tywin was stone. One misstep, hurt I. Remember. On the third evening, the host encamped by a birch copse smelling of root and green sap. As smithies hammered rivets from wagons' hub spokes, Arya saw a slim figure slipping between cook fires. Flat-footed tread, shoulders hunched as if fighting drizzle, though the sky was clear. The figure wore a drab hood stitched from dun cloth, neither servant livery nor soldier colors. Heart-knocking, Arya lifted one hand in cautious signal. The figure turned a moment, two calm gray eyes beneath ash-brown hair, and kept walking until the trunks swallowed him. Yakandat. Alive. Near. Alwards you may abide. She breathed easier, though she kept her face bored for Benfred's benefit. Later, under black sky pricked by waning moon, a parchment square slid beneath her tent edge. She knelt to catch it before wind curled the corner. No wax, no mark, only 4 words in precise Braavosi script. One night. One name. She crumpled it just as Brack scraped his chair, lantern swinging as he leaned to peer. Something amiss. No, she lied, voice brittle. Just wind. He ducked back. She sat cross-legged, paper flake hidden in fist, and felt the weight of decision settle like snow. The final name. Doandatwar. It had to be. Yet killing the Lion Lord might loose chaos that crushed Robb's host, and her own life, beneath retaliatory rage. A dead lion could still collapse a kingdom when he fell, but a living lion devoured that kingdom bite by bite. She breathed until the tremor left her limbs. Then she drew a fingernail along the parchment's edge, tearing it smaller, tucked half behind a tent peg, fed the rest to the lantern flame when Brax dozed. Ash drifted up, ghost gray, vanishing among night moths. Come dawn, she would give the name. Sleep found her only in shards. Memory fragments knifed between dreams. Sansa's laughter before Septa Mordane's lessons, Bran climbing the broken tower. Father's voice asking if she had washed. Each image felt centuries older than her bones. Finally, dull light glowed through canvas. Trumpets did not sound. Instead, alarm drums thudded out of rhythm. 1, 2, pause 1, the banished beat of enemy sighting. Brack sprang awake. Stay ye, he barked, though collar chain made staying unnecessary. He yanked tent flaps wide, vanished into clamor. Arya scrambled upright, heart hammering, collar biting her throat as the chain pulled taut outside. From the gap she glimpsed mounted outriders racing in, muddy and lather-spattered, shouting of Karstark spears north along the ridge. Tywin's command pavilion hummed like a disturbed hive. Armor clanked, orders lashed, farriers cursed. Chaos. Better than keys. She ducked low, felt a long chain until she found the loop slotted through Brax's stirrup leather. A small iron pin secured link to ring. Her fingers worried it, but the pin held fast. Teeth then, she gnawed, tongue tasting rust in Brax's sweat. Metal scraped free. just as a horn bayed from the ridge. 3 bleak notes. The wolves were slinking close. The chain slipped loose. She let it coil inside her cloak, stepped out. Soldiers crashed past without glancing, all eyes fixed on the tree-crested horizon. She moved against the flow, a salmon in torrent, ducking behind oat wagons, slipping beneath a standard of house pane. Within 50 paces, she vanished into the birch copse. Gray eyes waited behind a trunk, mottled black and white, calm as tarnished mirror. "Tywin Lannister," Arya whispered, breathless. "Tonight." Jaqen inclined his head as if granting a boon. "A girl is certain?" "Yes. A man will need distractions. Wolves at Ridge may prove enough. But fate turns on hidden wheels. If chance obstructs path, a different face may die. Will the girl accept?" "No, Tywin." She set her jaw. "He killed my father. Father was felled by other hands." Jaqen murmured. "He gave the order. Orders kill. Then a man obeys." Jaqen's lips twitched with faint irony. "Still, debt must honor request. Very well. One night. One name. Name?" He moved as if to fade into leaves. Arya gripped his sleeve. "Promise me. Not poison. It must be my blade." Jaqen studied her, head tilting. "A girl wishes to wield her own shadow? He thinks me harmless. I want him to know. Vengeance tastes sharper when eaten warm," Jaqen allowed. "But heat may burn the cook. Trust a man to choose the utensil." She released him. Branches stirred though no wind blew. And he was gone. Back inside camp, consternation had subsided. Scouts reported Karstark raiders withdrawing. Tywin canceled battle preparations, ordered forced march east to outflank. Beneath that command, smaller edicts fluttered like sparrows. Check girths, douse kitchen fires early, strike tents immediately. Benfred Brax returned, scowling as he found collar chain unhooked but still present. "Slipped," Arya said before he spoke. "Perhaps tie it better next time." He grunted, repinned link, never noticing how loosely the pin fit now. That day's march whipped the host hard. Clouds bunched black overhead, threatening rain without delivering. They followed a rutted forest track. Ranks stretched half a mile. Near sunset, they emerged upon Breakback Ford. The Trident lay there sheet silver, wide, but shallow. Low banks of pebbled bone sloped smooth to water's edge. Refugees once built pyres here after Robert's rebellion, casting bodies of the slain across drifting logs. The ghosts seemed to linger in hush that fell as first files waded thigh-deep. Arya rode palfrey beside Brax, chain slack. Cold current numbed her calves above boot tops. She glanced upstream to wooden pilings of a burned ferry pier. There, half hiding behind charred birch, a vague shape watched, hooded. Could be anyone. She steadied breath. On the far bank, the army spilled onto pasture grass. Tywin raised his pavilion by lantern light, too late to march farther. Order came. Host to rest dry, depart at near dawn. Night again, final accounting. Campfires winked across meadow like a smattering of alder seeds. She ate sparingly, heart too swollen for bread. Benfred dozed early. He had ridden hard, armor-rubbing saddle sores raw. The chain's pin, loosened earlier, slid out with one twist. She unwound link from his stirrup ring, coiled it until slack hummed inside cloak lining. Then she waited, lying as if asleep, counting the breaths between distant sentry calls. When the third watch horn croaked, middle night, she rose. The meadow air tasted damp, edges of frost sharpening grass. She slunk between tents, a ghost under crimson cloth, past butter barrels stacked like headless monks, past a latrine ditch glazed with moon. Tywin's pavilion crowned a slight hummock beyond a cordon picket, guarded by 4 spearmen flanking arched entry flaps. Canvas dyed Lannister red, glimmered dark. Lantern inside painting shapes of furniture. Campaign desk, armor stand, cot. Arya melted behind a grain cart. From its shadow she watched the rotation pattern. Every half-glass 2 guards stepped aside, relieved by pair from outer circle. leaving momentary cross-shadow lines where sight tangled. She timed it thrice, enough for a small figure to slip beneath tent hem at rear. When relief came again, she ran. Steps light, breath held, sliding on belly where slope dipped, wet grass, chilling cloth. She reached rear, found hems staked, a knife unsheathed, needle's point angled under rope. Saw, the knot frayed. She lifted the corner, crawled through. Inside, warmth, lamplight, hush. Tywin slept on campaign bed. Quilt of crimson damask. Breastplate rested on blackwood stand. Sword within easy reach on stool. A writing desk, cluttered with parchment, sprawled near candelabrum. Wax dripping onto slate char map of crown lands. The lamp wick hissed. Arya straightened. Heart a drum. Needle gleamed pale. She padded 2 steps. Tywin's face, lit by tremorous gold, seemed carved from alabaster. Cheekbones severe, mouth firm even in slumber, hair silver gold, splayed on pillow. No helm, no gauntlet. Merely a man. But men built wars. One night, one name. She raised the point to hover above the quilt, just where heart beat. Warmer breath gusted through her parted lips. Her hand shook. She recalled Bran's soft challenge voice when they sparred with sticks, his laughter, father's smile. She steadied. Press? Now. A whisper behind her. Move and the girl dies first. The words were low. Steel. Not Tywin's. She spun. Benfred Brack stood under the lamplight, helm off but sword out. Blood dribbled from a cut on his brow where she must have grazed him crawling out. How long had he stalked? His mail chimed softly. Tywin's eyes opened. Gold fixed on needlepoint inches from his chest. He did not flinch. Lord, Brack said, voice taut. She means to kill you. Tywin propped on one elbow, gazed to Arya. Calm. Of course she does. You may lower your sword. She will not strike. I will. Arya breathed though her arm trembled. You murdered my father. I executed a traitor. Tywin's voice emerged even, echoing small inside canvas. Do you plan to avenge every soul buried by treason? Your list grows long. Brax lunged to grab her wrist. She twisted, but his gauntlet clamped like bear trap. Needle clattered to carpet. Tywin rose, quilt falling, nightshirt crisp white. He motioned. Bind her. No collar now, shackles. Brax twisted arms behind her, snapped irons around wrists. Pain flared. Arya stared daggers into Tywin's golden calm. He regarded needle on floor, stooped, examined the blade. Castle forged. A dear gift, I recall. He set it on desk. Keep it safe. The girl will need her toys eventually. He faced her. You are brave, child. Bravery absent discipline is useless. Do you understand? She spat. Spittle landed on his shoe. He ignored. Your life hangs by threads thinner than your sword. Had this been Gregor Clegane's tent, or Amory's, a corpse you would be now. I value economy more than vengeance. Yet test me again, and I shall reproduce the mountain's fate on the smith, who tempered this blade. Go! Brax hauled her out. Guards gaped. Brax snapped at them to return to posts. They dragged her to prisoner wagon near camp edge, thrust her inside. Iron grill slammed. Darkness smelled of damp straw and old fear. She crouched, chains heavy. Tears threatened. She blinked until lids burned. Across wagon shadows, a fresh movement resolved. A seated man chained likewise, head lowered. Moon lodged between plank gaps, licked his hair silver. He lifted eyes. Gray, calm. A girl was bold, Jaqen murmured softly. But lions do not die easily. Cold fury hissed in her throat. You promised. A man promised death, not path. Chessboard shifted, pieces guarding king. Dance block squares. No. You watched me fail. He tilted head. Failure is step to success. Debt stands. One life unpaid. We play new game. I want him dead. Her voice cracked. Then learn patience sharper than steel. A stallion cannot gallop through stone gate, a cat finds gap. He glanced at her manacles. Keys often sit closer than eyes look. Footsteps neared, the wagon's guard making round. Jaqen lowered head again. Silent statue. Sleep came mercifully at dawn, riding exhaustion. She dreamed of wolves pacing frost-silver wood, muzzles stained with red poppy petals. They bowed as she passed. Eyes the green of werewoods. Day 3, after breakback, Tywin's host struck east along the Roserad. Word arrived of Stannis Baratheon besieging King's Landing. Tywin's course veered south. King's Landing needs the lion's roar. Trumpeted heralds. Horses were driven hard. Wagon prisoners shook with each rut. Arya's wrists bruised where iron cuff rubbed bone. Jaqen spoke seldom, usually at night. Chances bloom everywhere, he said one moonless eve as cicadas cried. Does the girl still taste vengeance? I taste iron, she muttered. And I still want him dead. Then, watch. Listen. Lions roar aloud, yet echoes reveal hollows in cliff. Tywin's column gray edged the reach border when Raven arrived. Stannis sailing up Blackwater. Cersei's pleas demanded swift return. Tywin split force. Cavalry racing south with him, foot left under Sir Adam Marbrand to Harry River Road. Prisoner wagon traveled among foot. Tywin kept Arya's life near yet not upon the field. At least until war's tide decided. Marbrand, ginger-bearded, crass, visited wagon. Lord Tywin says see she rides, not rattles like a bean. Unlock but guard twice. Thus, Arya was unchained for march. Wrists free, though collar reattached to a long lead held by Brax. Opportunity returned like scent of rain. One sleep beyond Maidenpool, they camped beside an orchard, half-blossomed. Apple perfume drifted through dusk. Arya ate stew beneath tether of collar chain, watching Brax hunch over dice game with 3 pikemen. His grip on leash slackened as luck turned, curses and cheers rising. When his cup spilled, laughter erupted. He bent to mop, set chain temporarily on ground. Arya slid away like smoke. 10 steps, 20, between tent shadows. The chain curled slack across dew. Ahead, orchard gaps beckoned. She ducked beneath low boughs, white petals dusting hair, heart a wild drum. Behind, Brax's voice bawled, "Girl! Thrall! Where?" Petals flew as she ran. Twigs clawed cloak. She shrugged free, collar tugging but not yet snapping to yank. Chain snagged root. She heaved, metal scraping bark. Voices erupted. She pressed through undergrowth to stone wall delimiting orchard's far side. Overhead, twilight sky bruised violet. Hands seized her from behind. Not Brax, these gripped gentler. Jaqen emerged from tree's shadow, collar chain in his grasp. Too fast, little wolf. Let me go. Not yet. He scanned darkening field. Horses come. Return or die under hooves. She cursed, tears hot. You promised my freedom, not another collar. A man promises life. Keep it now. He tugged. She followed, stumbling back toward camp. Guards rushed with torches. Brax stormed ahead, relief and anger warring. Back inside cordon, Jaqen melted into throng. Brax chained her wrist again. Slapped once, not hard enough to bleed, enough to smart. Run again and I cut your feet. Later, in wagon, Jaqen spoke through dark. Girls' haste costs lives. A patient knife never slips. I'm tired of patience. Then, sharpen it. She slept. A week later, Foothost reached Sowbelly Fields, near Hayford. King's Landing smoke drifted visible to southwest. Cannon thunder faint. Stannis assault underway. Marbrand orders, make forced night march southwest, unite with Lord Tywin along Blackwater Road. Night march meant confusion. Torches bobbed. Drums kept pace, but terrain uneven and horse lines tangled. Prisoner wagon lagged, axle creaking. A narrow ravine forced column single file. Marbrand barked to detach wagons along ridge, while cavalry cleared pass. Guards tethered wagon near stunted oaks, posted 2 men. Jaqen sat chain-linked inside, eyes closed like meditating monk. Arya studied guards. One young, nodding. Other older, nursing flask. Wind hissed through grass. A clack. Jaqen's wrists parted. Manacles undone by slim bit of wire he produced from sleeve. He slipped chain quietly. Eyes met hers. He extended tool. Girl can choose freedom now. Or lion's death. Paths diverge. She hesitated. Freedom sang like winter hearth smell. Like ghost of Winterfell. But memory of father's head on spike burned hotter. We kill lion. Then hold breath. He opened wagon door. Guards turned too late. Wire looped, flask guard collapsed, neck bloodless but broken. Young guard strangled silent. Jaqen's movements graceful as falling leaf. Come. He unlocked her. Through dark they crossed ridge, boots muffled in moss. Below ravine, torch strings wound. Horsemen clanked. Jaqen led to small rise where 3 bodies lay, guards felled earlier, and beside them, dusty cloaks and helms. Where? He donned helm, face vanishing in shadow. Arya belted sword scabbard, longer blade than needle, over tunic, tucked knife inside boot. Collar she hid beneath gorget plate. They merged with march tail, just 2 soldiers reclaiming position after piss. No one questioned. Drums boomed, host advanced. Blackwater fires lit horizon orange. Dawn would see battle. As sun bled, Tywin's cavalry approached from north, linking with foot at crossroads near Antlers. Marbrand guided foot into wedge around command pavilion where lion banners snapped. Tywin addressed captains, voice brittle with urgency. Arya, disguised, stood among ring of guards 10 paces away. Closer than ever, without leash. We strike Stannis' flank by dawn. Sir Garland holds southern ferry. Our horse cross at first light. Sigurd of then covers retreat lanes. Burn his ships, they drown. Tywin ended, dismissed men. Guards parted. He stepped toward his warhorse, gold armor catching torch sheen. Now. Arya's hand closed on dagger's ivory grip. She moved with flow of guards, weaving behind pairs they converged to hold stirrup. 2 steps. Target back sensuously broad. Cloak pinned by lion head brooch. She raised dagger. A mailed fist snatched her wrist. Jaqen dot. He hissed. Too many eyes. Torches everywhere. Stable hands. Pages, crossbowmen, lining palisade. Lanterns on supply carts. Sparks from smithy forging horseshoes even at midnight hour. Kill lion here, every soldier sees. Another way. Jaqen murmured, steering her aside. Opportunity slipped by. Tywin mounted, rode to head of vanguard. Fury seared her belly. She shook off Jaqen's grip. You risked all to stop me. Why? A man protects life of girl, and of debt. He glanced around. Follow path to river. Stannis waits. Smoke will hide death better than lamplight. You'll kill him there. Jaqen's lips curved. A man serves many-faced god. War is grand temple. Masks fall easily. Dawn. Smoke. Screams. Shipmasts aflame. Wildfire blossoms green on water like hell lotus. Arya lost Jaqen in chaos. Infantry surged down slope, clashed with Baratheon line already battered by wildfire catapults. She fought to keep footing, disguise still, sword in sweaty hand. Blades rang. Men deed. Around midday horns of house, Tyrell, sounded. Loras in golden rose plate crashed into Stannis' flank. Victory for lions and roses. Bodies piled. River ran crimson. Was Tywin dead? Alive? She pushed through milling wounded, seeking banner. Lannister standard stood still. Lord Tywin, face smeared with soot, rode past ranks, cheered by men as savior of the city. Her stomach iced. Night fell, victory feast erupted within gates. Prisoner wagon forgotten, collar lost. Arya stalked streets amid burning pitch stink. Refugees huddled. She reached Baelor's Sept Square where rubble pattered from balconies shattered by trebuchet. In alcove, she slumped. tears hot with rage. Girl weeps. Jacken's voice near. She looked up. He leaned against cracked marble pillar, face clean now yet older somehow. You failed, she said bitterly. A man offered path. Girl rushed another. He shrugged. Still, debt persists. But Lannister now elevated, killing him ripples far. Many-faced God weighs balance. I don't care about gods. Then care for result. Dead lion would birth war sands end. You desire home again? Peace for north? Choose wiser name. All. Me. Arya wiped cheeks. Who? Jaqen glanced across square where nobles filed toward Red Keep, drunk on triumph. Among them, her sister's queenly silhouette. No, that was Cersei. Perhaps Sansa inside. Warsmiths forge blades that kill children. Remove smith, blade still. Remove fire, steel yet cold. Remove king, smith starves. Choose fire. I don't understand. Fire feeds war. Rage, ambition, fear. He pointed slight to palace. Lord of Flames sits near Queen. Tyrion. She shook head. He saved King's Landing with wildfire. Maybe he was fire. But he spared her before. No, girl. Another. High inside Tower of the Hand burned lights. Tuin now hand. Fire indeed. Her heart turned lead. I want him dead. Then patient still. Red Keep walls thick. Shadows inside thinner. We need whisper. Girl can walk unseen. Castle vast. Spy. Find gap. I supply gift. What gift? Poison. Jaqen produced small vial. Tears of lice maybe. Clear. Out. One drop enough. She took vial cold as snake egg. Debt ends when lion sleeps. Spill. Then leave by river gate. 1 hour after sunset, following day. Rowboat waits. Then. D. He touched her cheek. Remember, a girl must live to close eyes. He vanished between columns. That night, Arya infiltrated Red Keep kitchens, disguised amid camp follower scullions pressed into victory feast service. Collar gone, hair chopped short by broken mirror glass, she carried trays up servants' steps. She glimpsed Cersei's bright green gaze across hall. Saw Sansa seated stiff by Queen's side. Pale but alive. Relief fluttered, bittersweet. Tywin presided at dais, goblet high. She studied routine. Each toast, each refill poured by Squire Talden. Wine from thick-bottomed flagon resting atop sideboard when not used. Access possible. Mid-feast she slipped vial into apron pocket. Waited until Squire left flagon to fetch bread. She passed sideboard, pretending to wipe spill. Tipped single drop into Red Arbor vintage. Liquid vanished within. Heart thundered. Return to galley, drop tray. Melt among departing kitchen rush. Sunset burned crimson as towers cast long shadows. She found river gate, hid beneath stone arch. Hour past creeping. Horn sounded within keep. Alarm? No doing. Celebration echoes. She stepped onto dock where small skiff bobbed. No one aboard. She waited. Minutes. Dadiu. Dusk deepened. Footsteps. Tyrion. Tar. He limped, face bandaged. Wildfire blast had scarred him. He saw her frowned. 7. Save me you again. Arya startled. And words stuck. Did he suspect? Behind Red Keep bells clanged sudden. A cacophony. Tyrion turned. What now? From windows of Tower of the Hand lights winked, then erupted with commotion. Bells rang frantic. Tyrion's shoulders sagged. Whatever it is, father will handle. He glanced her collarless neck. You escaped it seems. Go. Flee upriver before someone cares. He tossed small purse into skiff. For passage fees. She hesitated. I'm weary, he said. War devours even lions. Sail wolf cub. Find your pack. She pushed off. Current took boat. Above walls, chaos blossomed. She risked one glance. Torches danced in tower windows. Silhouettes rushed. Did poison work? Did Tywin fall? She would know soon, but not here. Yakin's debt closed. Her journey new begun. Moon rose, silvering water. Arya Stark rode into night. Vengeance breaths behind. Horizon ahead, or perhaps both reversed. And the song of Needle hummed quiet under cloak, promising tales not yet written, blood not yet spilled, life not yet lived, but fiercely waiting. A-K. Water slapped the hull in slow, hollow knocks, as though the black water itself were counting out Arya's heartbeats. The skiff drifted on a silken current, its single oar shipped to muffle the creak of leather thongs. Every so often she dipped the blade and steadied her course. But mostly she let the tide tug her north-northeast, away from the wildfire-blackened bay and the blood-stinking city walls. Moonlight painted the river pewter. Behind her, King's Landing glimmered like a nest of dying fireflies, each lantern a pulse of fever in the dark. A soft, damp breeze bore the distant clang of church bells. First frantic, then confused, then ragged. The bells had not stopped since dusk. She wondered if the poison had worked. Part of her wanted to see Tywin Lannister convulsing on a marble floor, with green sludge frothing from his lips. Another part whispered that true vengeance might require witness. But the sane part, the small, stubborn knot of sense left in her after Harrenhal, knew she would be dead if she'd lingered. Kings, queens, and lions alike could die without her to count the heartbeats. The purse Tyrion tossed rattled by her ankle. Silver stag, she guessed, and a few coppers for food. He had known exactly what she was. He had not shouted. Why? There were stories about the imp. Some said he strangled babes, others that he once freed a line of captives doomed for the gallows. Perhaps he simply enjoyed breaking patterns, confusing foes and friends alike. Perhaps he pitied little girls with wolves' eyes. Pity was a thin blanket in winter, but she wrapped herself in it anyway. Fog rose before dawn, swallowing the riverbanks and drawing soft gray curtains over the stars. The world shrank to the boat, the oar, her breath. She dozed, sitting upright, hand on needle beneath her jerkin, and dreamed she was running the rooftops of Winterfell while walls melted to green fire behind her. She woke when Hull rasped gravel and the fog had turned pearl pale with morning. Low dunes of river sand glimmered. A half-collapsed fishing shack perched on stilts farther up the bank. Its roof sagged like an old man's spine. Footprints marred the silt, recent, boot heel and bare both, as if folk had fled inland only hours ago. No smoke twined from the ramshackle chimney. She dragged the skiff until its keel carved a trench, tied the painter to a knob of driftwood, and climbed. Inside she found a rusted eel spear, 2 clay jars of salt pickles, a hemp line still baited with sun-dried sardine, and a folded net. She ate pickles until brine stung her cracked lips, then rinsed the jar in river water. The hut smelled of mildew and mouse droppings, but straw in one corner was dry enough to rest a while. She burrowed in, letting exhaustion sluice away, and told herself she would sleep until the sun cleared the treetops. She slept past noon. When she rose, shadows slept in the hollows of her eyes. High white clouds drifted overhead. From the south came the faint thunder of hooves and iron. Tywin's army or another. She rolled the net, slung the eel spear, and set off through reeds, keeping the river always in sight to her right. 2 days she traveled so, living on river mussels, half-ripe pears from abandoned orchards, and luck. The coin remained in her pouch. She feared markets. By night she pressed deeper into copses where foxes yipped and owls hooted at her trespass. Once she startled a stag standing chest-deep in mist. Its rack of antlers looked like a crown of bone, and for a heartbeat she thought of Robert Baratheon and how all kings die eventually. The third sunrise found her staring at the fork where the Blackwater met a lesser stream flowing down from the Crownlands. A stone bridge spanned it, squat and mossy. Smoke funnels climbed white beyond the far bank, campfires perhaps, or a village not yet abandoned. She eased through willow curtains, heart tight as drumskin, and studied the bridge. A soldier lounged half asleep against the keystone arch, helmet on breast, one boot dangling in midair. His tabard bore the gold fist of House Payne, but grime had dimmed the color. A wooden mug drooped in his hand, the other clutched a half-eaten loaf. Near him lay a crossbow. String slack. Arya counted the distance. 30 paces. Then another shape stirred in the shadows. A second guard, likewise weary. 2 only. Both drunk, or near it. She could skirt riverside and wade, but that exposed her to open pasture. Better the bridge. She slipped one pickle jar from her sack, edged along the weeds until a flat stone jutted over the water, and lobbed the jar far downstream. It shattered with a splash. Both guards jerked, cursing, peering over parapets. She darted straight across. Soft steps, heart slamming. Their heads never swiveled. Beyond the bridge, a rutted cart track led into low hills where stands of oak and poplar rose like green gold spires. Wagon marks looked a fortnight old. Hoofprints overlapped, pointing north. She followed until noon heat turned air-wavy. The road veered west, but Arya struck deeper into trees. Birds hushed. Strange. She slowed, listening. A twig cracked to her left. She froze, slipping needle's hilt into sweaty palm. Nothing. Then, a snort, low and heavy. Not human. She pivoted in time to see a lanky, brindled sow rooting in leaf litter. Her pulse eased. The sow's tusks flashed. She turned aside. Arya drank brook water from cupped hands, snared a crayfish, and ate it raw. She thought of Jaqen. Did he ride still with Marbrand's host? Was his promise truly paid now? The many-faced god took coins and lives, he'd said, but gods were worse than coin lenders. They always charged interest. She reckoned her debt only just begun. Toward dusk she came on a hamlet wedged against shallow rolling fields. No banners hung. Only ragged curtains flapping. Smoke rose thin from 2 chimneys. She crept among outbuildings and smelled onions frying. Her stomach knotted. She pictured the silver Tyrion had gifted. She could pay, yet coin invited questions. She circled to a barn and wriggled beneath a split door. Hay-sweet musk filled her nose. A cart lay dismantled, its axle cracked. Hens clucked overhead on the loft beams. She found a coil of rope and a wooden shovel. She also found a boy, 8 maybe, dozing on a grain sack, cheeks smudged. His eyes opened wide. "Who are you?" he whispered. "A girl lost," she said. "Hungry but not cruel." He blinked, then pointed to a clay pitcher. "There's milk. Goat, not sour yet." She drank warm milk while the boy watched. "Where are your parents?" "Gone to the old sept, with Maester Eglon. Fetchin' medicine. Bandits cracked his skull last week. They's fear an infection." He rubbed sleepy eyes. "Are you a bandit?" Arya wiped her mouth. "No. I'm nobody. Nobody's good," he said solemnly. He looked at Needle. "Nice sticker." She almost laughed. "Thank you." She pulled a silver stag from her pouch, the coin gleaming. "For the milk." The boy's jaw dropped. He shook his head. "Mad thrash me if I took money. You need it more than I do." She pressed the coin into his palm. "Hide it. Tell no one." He stared at her as if she'd spun gold from thin air. "Stone crows nest south o' here," he whispered. "They hate lions and wolves both. Hide your sword or they'll gut you." "Thank you," she said and left before the parents returned. Night found her beneath a crabapple tree, stars wheeling above. She chewed half-ripe fruit until gums bled, then slept wrapped in cloak. Dreams came. Father's voice, Sansa singing, Nymeria's footsteps patting the wolf's wood, Tywin's eyes turning cloudy under torchlight. She woke near dawn, cold sweat on her neck. The world smelled of dew and crushed apple. 2 more days passed and the woods thinned. Hills stretched like sleeping lions, riddled with old charcoal pits and rabbit warrens. She glimpsed riders once, 3 abreast, mail glinting, Bolton-skinned man banners. She hid until they rode on. Robb had bannermen everywhere, but she trusted none. Bolton's men flayed, rumor said. She would not risk it. Toward evening, trumpet calls drifted across open ground. Deep, raspy, ringing. She climbed a knoll and squinted. An army snaked north along the King's Road. 5,000 maybe, dust plumes trailing, sunlight flashing off spearheads. Banners fluttered crimson and silver. Too disciplined for Sellswords. Tywin's infantry? No. They marched north, and she heard rumor of his death. But rumors lied like courtiers. Her pulse raced. Then she saw the dire wolf sigil rippling black on gray. House Stark. Beneath it, the leaping trout of Tully. Her knees wobbled. Robb's host. But if Robb led, he would ride front. She dared not run screaming. Lannister spies stalked everywhere. Still. Family. The word pulsed, warm as summer. She crouched in broomgrass until the head of column passed. Outriders, scouts, a vanguard of mailed spearmen. At their rear rode a tall man in dark plate with a pauldron shaped like a snarling wolf's head. His visored helm raised, revealing a long, sorrowful face. Sir Brynden Tully, the Blackfish. She knew him from Winterfell. He had teased Bran with trout flip tricks. Her throat tightened. Beside him rode a lean knight in mail half-rusted. A flayed man pennant clutched. Roose Bolton himself. The two conversed in low tones, eyes scanning horizon. If Bolton commanded here, Robb was elsewhere, fighting near Riverrun perhaps, or holding the neck. But Brynden would not leave Robb's side lightly. Maybe they rode to treat with Freys, or to secure High Heart. The baggage train rattled past, wagons stacked with grain sacks, barber surgeons, smiths. A line of prisoners trudged behind. Lannister men, judging by lion-embroidered breeches where trousers had not been stripped. Some were barefoot, some bound by rope. A hooded figure prodded them with a spear. The hood fell for a heartbeat, and she glimpsed red-gold hair and wary green eyes. Jaime? No. Jaime was still Robb's captive, she knew. But this one looked young. A cousin, maybe. A lion among wolves. Her skin prickled. She could follow, slip into column as a camp follower, reach Robb by night. But Bolton's men mistrusted strays. She risked flaying or worse. Still, family. She shadowed the host from a ridge, keeping a furlong back. When dusk bled, the column encamped in a shallow vale ringed by stone outcrops. Fires twinkled. Owls called. She stole closer, padding between supply huts. Eloy's voice cried out. She ducked behind a water barrel. Two soldiers, both Bolton men, dragged the red-gold prisoner toward a cookfire. The captive twisted, anger raw Dachwa. One soldier shoved him to knees. The other drew dagger. Lannister cadet or not, he looked a boy of 15. Their words drifted. "Wolf supper tonight," chuckled one. "Got him first," the other said. Lord Bolton's bored. Fear flamed in the prisoner's eyes. But pride squared his shoulders. He spat blood at their boots. Something in Arya snapped. Maybe she hated lions, but this felt wrong. It echoed Lami's arrow, Gendry's chains, her own collar. She moved without thought. Needle flashed from cloak. She sprang, hamstringing the first guard. He shrieked and collapsed. The second swung dagger. She ducked, stabbed up under armpit, found soft gap in mail. Blood sprayed crimson against firelight. His eyes went glassy. The prisoner gaped. "Who?" "No time," Arya hissed. Shouts rose down the line, men reacting to screams. She sliced his wrist bonds. "Run west, into trees. Follow the setting sun. Bentio." He stared at his rescuer's corpse, then at her wolf-gray eyes. "My name is... don't care." She pushed him. He fled limping into darkness. Bolton's sentries thundered up. She sprinted opposite direction, lungs ripping. Bolts hissed past. Campfires blurred. She dove beneath a wagon, rolled through mud, came up behind tents. Dogs bayed. She cut guy ropes. Canvas sagged, and men cursed. In chaos, she fled the perimeter and plunged into wheat higher than her shoulders. The night swallowed her. She ran until her legs burned, then jogged, then staggered. Forest embraced her eventually, wild and owl-lit. She collapsed beneath beech roots and trembled, half in rage, half in raw relief. At dawn, shrieks of carrion crows woke her. She rose aching, drank from a limestone seep, and headed northwest. She mused on Bolton. If his men butchered prisoners for sport, Robb must never trust him. She needed to warn her brother. But first, she had to find him. 3 leagues brought her to a village, charred to the foundations. Ashford Cross, the sign said, blackened but legible. Bodies hung from a gallows beam. 3 men, 2 women, child. A wooden plank nailed to post read thieves. Flies droned. She retched almond bitter. No supplies left but a chipped whetstone and baby doll's head. She buried the child body after cutting it down. Soil crumbled through her fingers like gray meal. Past Ashford Cross the land wrinkled into heaths where heather breathed honey and bees, murmured lazy songs. She stole a bakestone loaf cooling on sill of lone crofter's hut, left a silver stag in its place. The coin felt like penance. Stolen, given, balanced. That evening rain mizzled. She took shelter beneath a slate ledge and tried to sleep. Memories kept pricking. The Lannister boys' stare, Bolton's laughter, Tywin's steady eyes the moment before she'd dropped poison. Was he dead now? Did Sansa know? Did Cersei? Bells had tolled. She prayed silently to the old gods that they'd tolled for a corpse. Not a coronation. 3 nights later, she reached a slaughter field along the banks of the Tumblestone. 10 burned wagons blocked the road, their skeletons red-rusted. Dead oxen lay bloated, leg ropes charred. Arrows jutted from timber. Tracks told tale. Ambush from river shallows, barrels smashed, cargo looted. Wolves picked at remains. One raised its silver muzzle when she approached, eyes pale green. Her breath caught. Nymeria. No, smaller, leaner Arya. The wolf trotted off, tail low. She watched until it vanished. Someone else watched too. A soft twang. Feathered shaft thudded in tree trunk a foot from her head. She dove. Halt. A voice called from bank. Show yourself or next one finds your throat. She stepped out, arms wide, needle dangling. 6 figures emerged in patchwork armor. Bows, spears, scavenged shields. No livery but ragged cloaks. Their leader lowered his bow. A tall, rangy man with sun-bleached beard and crow-black eyes. Not a lion, he muttered. Too small for Wolfguard, though. Who's your king? I have none, Arya said. You're just breathing in my killing grounds. That earns a toll. He approached, nudging her pack with boot. Branston, he told a wiry youth. Check her purse. No. Arya stepped back. Needle kissed air. The leader smiled. A scratch blade. Gutting hogs, maybe. Toss it over. She remembered Yoren's growl. Never show fear. Try take it, she snapped. The bearded man's grin widened. Fiery. He unhooked axe from belt, but before he advanced, a stout woman hulking behind him spoke. Tom, leave the cub be. She's no coin-fat merchant. Tom, if that was his name. Cocked brow. She smells of silver. You need new nose. She smells of mudfish. They bickered quietly. Arya's gaze slid past to the symbols, painted on their scavenged shields. A hanged man. A red heart pierced by arrow. A blackbird. Brotherhood without banners. Stories said they fought for small folk, kingless. She relaxed only a hair. I knew Harwin once, Arya said, remembering the stable boy who rode south with her father. Son of Hullen. Tom squinted. Harwin rides with us still. Then bring him. He'll vouch. They searched her anyway, took the purse, and marched her upriver to a copse camp where a score of outlaws sharpened blades under rain-soaked tarps. Fires burned low. Harwin emerged when called, hair longer but eyes the same. When he saw Arya Stark, his jaw unhinged. Sweet 7, he breathed. He knelt. She yanked him up. No kneeling. He hugged her hard. Lady Arya, I thought you dead. Ned's girl alive. He told the Brotherhood her story. Winterfell, Harrenhal, escape. They passed Wineskin, cheered softly. Even Tom looked chastened. They returned her coin, fed her turnip stew thick with salt pork. Under dripping canvas she felt warm for first time in moons. Thoros of Myr, their red-robed priest, knelt beside her and listened to every word about Tywin's poisoning. His forked gray beard smelled of smoke and rain. If Lord Tywin is dead, the war's spine may snap, Thoros mused. Cersei will lash out. Young wolves will scent weakness. Dull. Or trap, Beric Dondarrion added, emerging from shadow, patch over one eye. Lannisters are tricksy. Arya told them of Bolton's cruelty. Beric cursed. We ride at dawn to harry him. Will you join us? My brother needs me. Robb's in the west, Harwin said. Bolton marches east for Duskendale. Best road to Robb is through the Twins or by River Run. Frey's block one, siege blocks the other. Arya's heart sank. She fingered needle. Then I'll find another way. Beric studied her. You can stay, train, ride with us. Danger aplenty. Netims. She met his lone eye. Every path is danger. True, he agreed and clapped her shoulder. Rest, decide at dawn. That night, rain eased. She lay near fire watching sparks spiral, thinking. Going west alone meant roads teeming with lions and treacherous wolves. Riding with the Brotherhood meant fighting, hiding, striking. Skills she had, friends she lacked, and they hurt Lannisters. Tywin might lie dead, but Cersei lived, Joffrey still sat throne. Her list brimmed yet. At dawn she rose and told Beric she would ride. He nodded solemn approval. They found her a shaggy Garin named Embers for his chestnut mane. Harwin strapped saddle. Tom strummed a half-stringed lute, singing a ribald song that made her laugh for first time since Winterfell's fall. They rode northwest in small bands, weaving through copses, raiding Lannister supply wagons with sudden arrow storms. Arya learned to shoot short bow left-handed, to loose, fade, and vanish. She stitched wounds with coarse gut, comforted dying farmers, burned lice-infested bedding. Beric died twice, once to crossbow bolt in gut, once to mace blow. Thoros kissed life back with red prayers. Arya watched, wide-eyed. Death cheated, gods flexing. News trickled in. Tywin Lannister lingered 3 days in fever before dying at King's Landing. His corpse lay in the grate sapped, face serene as marble, lips purple. Cersei named herself Queen Regent and raged, sacking half the small council. Tyrion vanished. Some said he smuggled out on a Braavosi cog, others that Cersei chained him in black cells, blaming him for poisoning. When Arya heard, she walked beyond camp alone. Wind rattled oak leaves overhead, and she whispered, "Follow Morgulis, my lord." Then louder, one name crossed out. She waited for elation. None came. War still crushed the realm. Weeks passed. They struck Bolton foragers near Salwa's Horn, freed 6 prisoners destined for flaying. Beric sent the flayed banners as warning. We are watching. Northmen cheered, but Bolton retreated, wary. Deep autumn fell. Forests blazed red gold. Arya sparred daily with Lemoncloak, grew bruises, grew faster. She ceased thinking like prey, began to think like hunter. One dawn they found a line of villagers hanged by Frey men, Black Walder's lot. Arya cut them down, lips tight. Beric swore on his burning sword they'd answer. They rode hard for Seagard, where Walder's nephew commanded levy. On outskirts they ambushed a column bearing Frey colors. Arrows hissed. Arya killed her first man with bow. Shaft through throat. He gurgled Ma's name. She tasted bile. War was blood, she told herself. Better Frey blood than Stark. Night after battle she sat by creek, scrubbing crimson from hands. Harwin knelt. You saved villagers at Ashwalk. I killed boymen today. War spares none. She nodded, but eyes stung. When does it end? When the realm tires. It never tires. No, Harwin agreed, but hearts do. He clasped her shoulder. Yours still cares. That means you're winning. Next day, banners of Tully fluttered across horizon. A courier galloped. River Run relieved, Edmure freed, but Robb slain at Red Wedding. Words struck like hammer. Arya collapsed to knees, breath gone. Robb dead, mother dead, Grey Wind's head sewn on body. Horror poured from Courier's tongue. Wolves of the north, slaughtered under guest right. Frey smiled. Bolton smiled. Arya screamed into fists until voice cracked. Beric hugged her gentle. Vengeance remains, he whispered. Fire of grief hardened to iron inside her. Robb's justice stolen, hers now. Brotherhood Council argued. Some said ride north, punish Frey. Others said realm needs protector still. Arya listened, then spoke. I will go north. Silence fell. Beric studied her. Alone? Yes. Come spring we ride too, he promised. But winter stalks near. Snow closes passes. I've walked winter before. He sighed. Take Lemon Harwin to Shining Creek at least. They set out over frost-hard ground. Night after night, moon carved silver ruts across ice. They crossed the neck on fisherman's raft, bribed Cranagman with the imp's coin that remained. At Queenscrown they parted, Lem back to Brotherhood, Harwin leading Arya toward Oldcastle. Snow thickened. One dawn they found the river iced. Harwin's horse broke through, floundered, drowned. He limped ashore, cough rattling. Weirwoods whispered overhead. Harwin pressed something into Arya's palm. Her father's bronze hand, mini sigil had kept from Winterfell stables. Lord Eddard would be proud, he rasped. Fever glazed his eyes. Don't die, she begged. He smiled. I'll find the quiet isle, heal. He kissed her brow. Go, wolf cub. She left him wrapped in cloak near cave of reed folk, tears freezing on cheeks. Alone, she trekked north. Hearthfires burned far on moors, she avoided them. Twice she outpaced mounted scouts. Bolton's riders wearing the flayed man, now Lord of Winterfell. Each sight twisted gut. She reached the banks of the White Knife, as snow swirled thick as goose down. Ice floes collided with dull booms. No ferry would cross. She built lean-to beneath spruce, huddled. Hunger gnawed. She considered catching fish, but water raged. Night deepened. Northern lights shimmered green-gold. Arya dreamed of a white direwolf leading her across frozen ford. She woke to howl. On opposite bank, a massive wolf stood, fur pale as moon, eyes burning ember red. Ghost dosed, which meant John. Relief pulsed. The wolf paced, then vanished among firs. Arya rose, heart galloping. She scanned river. There, at shallow part, stones protruded. She tested ice, held. She stepped, slid, lunged, heart thundering. Water lapped boots, but she crossed. Tracks led uphill to a ringfort ruin. Smoke whirled from snow-covered pit. A figure crouched, stirring embers. When he turned, torchlight caught black curls. A scar-lined face older, sterner, Jon Snow. For a moment, the world stilled. Snowflakes drifted between them like feathers. Then Arya ran, colliding with his chest. He wrapped arms around her, trembling. I thought you lost, he breathed. I'm here, she sobbed. Rob, mother. I know. Pain shadowed his eyes. I lead rangers south to find survivors. She touched Ghost's cold nose as he materialized. Memories flooded. Fencing lessons. Bran's laughter. Sansa's songs. Jon's arms held them all. They spoke till dawn. Her journey, his battles beyond wall. Stannis' aid, the Night's Watch fraying. He listened, jaw tight, when she spoke of Bolton betrayal and Frey horror. Justice waits, he vowed. Stannis marches on Winterfell soon. We'll carve the flayed man down. Arya stroked Needle's warm grip. I'll fight. You will. But first safety at Castle Black. Nemnersond. Dimsior. Home is Winterfell, she insisted. Then we take it back. He smiled. Sad, fierce. Wolf pack gathers here. They broke camp. South driving wind moaned through pines. Jon led toward Moletown Path, Ghost scouting. Arya walked beside, feeling world widen. War still raged, names still cold on her tongue. Cersei, Walder, Roose, Ilyn, Meryn. But she was not alone. The pack was not broken. Snow hissed on leather, numbing ears. But inside she burned bright. Winter might swallow roads, but a girl forged in shadow and fire would carve new ones. And somewhere behind, 1,000 faces laughed in the dark. But she had her own, and it was carved of stubborn northern stone. Far ahead, the wall loomed unseen yet certain as sunrise. Home waited beyond. Home and vengeance both. Needle tapped her ribs with each step, whispering its promise, and Arya Stark walked on. Inno. Snow sifted through the pine boughs like flour shaken over dark dough, gathering in soft crescents upon Jon's shoulder before slipping down the slope of his cloak. Arya trudged beside him, the crunch of her boot soles echoing Ghost's silent tread ahead. The Garen embers followed on a loose lead. The horse's breath coiled in the frigid dawn air, rope mane striped silver beneath a sky still paling from indigo to the faintest thaw of blue. Wind swirled across the clearing, bringing with it the mingled scents of pine sap, frozen loam, and distant wood smoke. Once, such a dawn would have meant hunting with her brothers around Winterfell's ponds, but that world seemed centuries removed. Now, each frost-bitten gust tasted of exile, and return intermingled so closely she could not tell which flavor lingered longer on her tongue. They traveled northward through tumbled ravines and over granite ridges, climbing steadily toward the massive white line that finally breached the horizon like an artificial mountain range. The wall, a barrier of slow-moving glass that devoured the colors of sunrise and regurgitated them as dead pearl. Jon spoke little during the ascent. The unspoken burden of command sat heavily on him, and each mile reminded him how thin his Night's Watch patrol had stretched itself to guide refugees from the southern warbanks back to the relative safety of lands they abandoned when winter first gnawed. There was talk of wildlings, of restless giants glimpsed among the foothills to the west, and of skin-changers whose owls followed like spies between moonlit branches. But Jon seemed almost comforted by threats he knew. It was against the betrayals behind him that his shoulders remained rigid, the nightmares that dawn painted every few hours across the backs of his eyes. Arya tried twice to ask how many men he commanded, how the wall fared after Stannis' victory over Mance Rayder, but each question came out brittle, wrapped in her grieving for the dead at the Twins, and neither she nor Jon yet possessed courage to unwrap that parcel fully. Instead, she listened to the world. The bark of ravens converging on old corpses, the hush of falling snow filling prints behind them, the ragged lullabies Jon murmured to Ghost in the old tongue, whenever the wolf bristled at scents neither human nose could parse. On the 5th evening, they reached a deserted watchway station. A ring of moss-choked castrum stones, long abandoned even before Aegon's time, repurposed by fleeing crofters as a shelter during earlier winters. Melted candle ends still clung to a hearthplate blackened with soot. Jon knelt to blow on a small scattering of coals someone had left banked under ash. To Arya's surprise, faint embers still glowed. He coaxed them with pine needles, breathed life until orange tongues lapped a sliver of charred birch. The fire grew, and embers sighed a horse's sigh as warmth leaked into the ruin's broken bones. While Jon dug in his satchel for salt beef, Arya wandered the perimeter, brushing snow off half-buried iron hoops that might once have served as cauldrons. She pictured old Nan bending over such a pot, spinning tales while she stirred, and the image cut her like a knife. The ruination of Winterfell had not managed this blow. The finality of Robb's silence had. Grief nested in every breath. Yet each time it threatened to paralyze her, the memory of Tywin's purpled lips returned, and vengeance acted as poultice. She crouched at the broken doorway where wind funneled through, polishing tracks to glassy grooves. Ghost appeared, nose streaked white, eyes glowing. He padded to her side and nudged her hip. Jon glanced up then, the fire smearing golden across the fatigue carved beneath his eyes. "He likes you better than most," he said, voice husked by cold and quiet. "He remembers. Hard to forget chasing him into the crypts," she answered, almost smiling. "He bit my wrist once when I tried trimming burrs from his tail. I remember Maester Lovene scolding me. A princeling should mind his pets before they grow into gallows hounds." Jon tore beef into strips and laid them on a flat stone near the flames. "Ghost never cared for titles. Neither do I. Arya muttered, sinking beside him. Titles get heads chopped. Heads sewn to wolves. The words hovered between them longer than the gust that rattled dead ivy along the walls. John handed her a strip of meat. The flavor was mostly salt and old grease, but it grounded her in something real. Warmth. Sustenance. The knowledge that bitterness could not feed muscles. "Our road forks tomorrow," John said once the fire trimmed the worst of their shivers. "East to Castle Black, or west toward Stannis' encampment at Queensgate. He's mustering for the march on Winterfell. If you come to Castle Black first, you'll be safe behind the wall while I ride to battle." She bit down, sinew squeaking between teeth. Safe is a word men use to sheathe little girls. "I won't stay behind walls again. Not ever." "That's infamy." "I thought you'd say that." He stared at flames. "I can't bring you directly into a siege, but if we reach Stannis, he might grant you leave to scout. You know Winterfell's passages better than any Southron knight." Arya considered. Part of her screamed, yes, sneak into the castle she loved, sabotage Bolton from within, slice Rue's pale neck the way she'd imagined slicing Tywin's. But another part felt the weight of winter pressing. Infiltration in a siege required coordination, required men who trusted each other. Robb's scouts had trusted one another, and they'd been butchered under false banners. Those memories cautioned patience. The virtue Jaqen had attempted to tattoo on her bones. "I'll do what helps punish Frazen Bolton's fastest," she answered. "Even if that means staring at stone while others fight." John's eyes softened. "Father would be proud." She shook her head. "Father's dead because he believed the world prized honesty." Her voice cracked around the ember of fury. "I'll settle for winning." Night deepened. They set a watch. John first, Arya second, and slept in turns. Her dreams were a stew. Robb's crown melting onto Frey banquet platters, Bolton flayers sharpening knives made from Sansa's bones, Nymeria leading 100 wolves across the twins to gnaw Walder's swollen throat. She woke thrashing, hand on needle. John soothed her with a murmured, "Quiet now," like he used long ago after Bran's fall. Dawn found icicles hanging from Ghost's whiskers and the fire a bed of ruby coals. They crossed the eastern spur of the King's Road by midday, where the old straight pavers still peaked beneath windswept snowdrifts. 200 refugees had camped under a toppled load of oak planks, hungry crows overseeing them like bishops of misery. A peddler's cart lay broken, its wares, spoons, cracked plates. A rusted kettle, scattered as if gods had thrown a tantrum. John counted the bodies discreetly. Arya saw his jaw tightens at the small shapes wrapped in what once might have been cloaks. He paid each corpse a glance of silent command, promising with his eyes some future vengeance or at least a grave. There were no tools, and the ground shared the hardness of iron, so they stacked stones in cairns instead. Ghost dug shallow hollows with forepaws, whining each time his claws struck frozen soil. When finished, John slid a pewter ladle upright as a marker, handle pointing toward the wall like a stiffened finger of accusation. "Every cairn along this road is a testimony," he said, wiping grit from his gloves. "When spring arrives, the weight of them will choke history." Arya brushed snow from her brow. "History's already choking." They moved on as sun dipped. The wall grew monstrous, looming over the horizon, layers of dusk-shadowed violet shimmering on its slick surface. Castle Black's watchtower, torches twinkled like freckles atop a giant's cheek. John lifted his fingers to his lips and whistled twice. Minutes later, a horn call answered, one long note trembling through the pines like a whale's cry echoing underwater. A wooden palisade had been constructed far south of the main gate. "Stannis engineers," John explained, preparing for seasonal expansion. Riders intercepted them there, black cloaks swirling. Arya reflexively palmed needle, but John hailed them by name. They recognized him and parted, mouthing the words, "Lord Commander," with the awe men once reserved for kings. John never corrected them. He gripped Arya's shoulder, ushered her forward through the narrow gate. Inside, Castle Black resembled an anthill. Ropes creaked along lift towers, hauling barrels of pitch, bundles of firewood, sacks of barley. Night's Watch brothers drilled with spear and shield on the yard's trampled crust. Many wore brigandine patched with bright Baratheon stags, or the fiery heart of Erlilor. Donations from Stannis quartermasters. Rory of Mole's town handed out steaming trencher bowls while muttering half-prayers. The air smelled of wood smoke, horse sweat, and onion stew. Arya's stomach growled. Jon led her straight to the common hall, where a line of stewards scraped chairs across stone. She noticed heads turning, whispers chased them. Lord Commander's sister. Someone breathed. Another. Stark girl come back from graves of frays. Each whisper felt at once like balm and threat. She kept her chin up, eyes scanning corners for threats. The chatter quieted. Inside his sparse quarters, Jon slid the bar shut. A four-poster bed slanted under patched quilts. A writing desk bore wax-sealed letters. On the hearth, a pot of spruce tea bubbled. Candlelight rimmed the room with amber hush. Jon poured 2 cups. Hand trembling from fatigue only now permitted to show. "I sent Samuel to Old Town," he said, pushing 1 cup across the table. "He's to learn secrets that might fell White Walkers for good. Gilly and the babe go with him." Arya sipped. Steam coated her lashes. "The dead still march." "Yes. The king beyond the wall is slain, much of his horde scattered, but the true enemy rides with winter wind. We have sightings. Blue-eyed shadows glimpsed beyond the frostfangs. Packs of whites gnawing at the gates of deserted keeps. They gather. Neo. Not. At least some enemies are honest." She muttered. "The dead don't pretend friendship." Jon smiled grimly. "Take heart in something, little sister. The living still fight back. Stannis holds Eastwatch. His cell sails cut ironwood for siege towers meant to breach Winterfell. He wants Roosev's head on a spike almost as much as you." "Almost." She traced the rim of her cup. "Will you join his assault? Night's Watch cannot turn its whole strength south. But custom matters less when black brothers die flayed in their beds. I'll send a contingent, even lead it, if Maester Aemon blesses." He paused. "But the Watch must remain neutral. So we march at night, cloaks reversed, under direwolf and trident, not black." Arya's eyes sharpened. "You'd raise the Stark banner." "Not yet. But ghosts of Winterfell must know their name." He wrapped hands around his cup, as if fearing its warmth might leave. "Dennis needs paths through the Dreadfort country. Tunnels, sallyports, anything that spares his army a frontal storm. You alone can guide him. So rest a day. Equip. Then we ride to Queensgate. Then to." Resting felt impossible, but Arya obeyed. She bathed. In icy water hauled from a kettle, scraped grime from her limbs until the basin swilled gray. A steward named Hob sewed the tears in her cloak. Another, Satin, offered her boiled leather bracers sized for a boy squire. She almost refused, until Jon whispered they once belonged to a lad slain at the fist of the first man. She wore them in his honor. That night, Ghost and Embers were stabled with 20 other mounts. Arya slept in Jon's cot with a dagger under her pillow. Her dreams were restive, a weirwood bleeding over a frozen lake, Bolton's flayed skin banners melting into the sigil of a lion, and Nymeria again, this time leading not wolves but gaunt villagers armed with pitchforks, her pack ever swelling. When dawn glowed gray, trumpets sounded along the eastern ramparts. Stannis had arrived. 500 cavalry standard-bearers churning snow into froth. 2,000 were ragged veterans marching behind columns of armored men, and even a line of monstrous elk-drawn supply sledges commanded by Queen Selise. Their arrival crackled like new sparks thrown into an old hearth. Resentments heated, hopes popped. In Stannis' shadow walked a woman robed in scarlet silk, red hair bright as spilled wine, Melisandre of Ashai. Arya felt the thrum of some odd gravity when those crimson eyes met hers across the yard. The red woman tipped her head as though recognizing a pattern only she could see. Stannis attended parley in the king's tower solar. Jon invited Arya to stand behind him, claiming a squire's pretense. She kept silent while priorities clashed. Stannis demanded full Night's Watch support. Jon insisted the wall must hold. Eventually they struck a bargain. 100 black brothers under Sir Denys Mallister, plus a cadre of scouts led by a Stark survivor, intimately aware of Winterfell's inner ways. Stannis' ice-blue gaze fixed on Arya. "As though the wolf returns," he rasped. "You'll do as your king commands." "I've had too many kings," she replied. "But I will see justice." Melisandre stepped closer. "I see shadows swirling about you, child of winter. Many faces, many names. Some will fall by your hand, others, you by theirs." Her voice wrapped the syllables like velvet around steel. "The flames show me two paths, one of vengeance, one of mercy. Which will you choose?" Arya clenched her jaw. "Mercy is a gift reserved for those who deserve it. None of my names do." The red woman's smile curved like a scimitar. "So it is written in embers." Within 2 days the vanguard rode from Castle Black. Jon, Arya, Sir Justin Massey, Sir Godry Faring, Melisandre, and a ragged column of shield-bearers. They traveled light, carrying only arrow quivers, trencher bread, dried venison, and slender iron stakes, rumored to halt corpses risen by the Great Other. From behind, the thunder of the main host pressed, but scouting required speed. The King's Road south of Queensgate sprawled empty save for drifts, but charred palisades testified to reavers who had already plundered. Smoke columns still rose where outriders torched half-abandoned crofts, feeding Stannis cookfires. Their path dipped into the shadow of foothills before vaulting east toward the Gift. By then, winter sun rarely climbed above the treetops, and each noon felt like twilight. During these days, Arya honed her hearing. She recognized the squeal of leather drying too near a fire, the hollow crack of river ice fracturing under a horse's shod hoof, the difference between the cough of a man disguising fear and that of one clearing phlegm. Such small distinctions kept her alive when, on the 8th midnight south of Long Barrow, woods exploded in white. Bolton men ambushed from snow-laden hollows, half-cloaks patterned like birch bark. Arrows shrieked. Melisandre raised both hands in flame fountained from her palms. No torch in them, just pyre-bright grandeur that blinded the first wave. Horses shrieked. Jon shouted orders. Arya dug heels, embers springing over felled limbs. She glimpsed Faring hacking a lancer's throat, the spray freezing mid-air like crimson shards. 3 riders peeled toward her, eyes under slitted helms glinting malice. She slid to Ember's left flank, used the horse's body as shield, then wrenched up in stirrups and loosed needle from its clamp. The first rider's spear grazed her boot. She swiped at his thigh, slicing mail straps so the greave flapped. Embers crashed shoulder first into the second. Toppling man and mount. Arya leaned low, carved his exposed neck. Hot blood steamed across her gloves. The third, a brute with flayed man emblem painted fresh red, thrust a mace. Arya twisted, mace head smashing Ember's rump. The horse screamed, reared, flinging her into powder. She rolled aside, hooves hammered where her skull had been. She rose into a crouch, vision narrowing to the mace's next arc. The brute grinned under his visor, then Ghost hurled from the dark, jaws clamping on his wrist. Steel clanged to snow. Arya darted forward, needle in reverse grip, and plunged upward into his armpit. His scream died as lungs filled with blood. By the time Jon's horn sounded recall, Bolton's survivors fled, leaving 14 corpses and 2 prisoners, trussed like deer. Melisandre's fire had spent itself. Her cheeks glowed feverish. She murmured to the flames within each fallen torch, reading shapes only she perceived. Arya found Embers trembling but alive. She pressed her forehead to the horses and whispered thanks. Stannis' main host caught them next dawn. Jon's report pleased him. Bolton scouts repelled, morale firm. He ordered a forced march to Moat Cailin, where his ironborn allies under Asha Greyjoy waited after retaking the ruins from Ramsay's garrisons. Arya rode near Asha for a day, curious about this daughter of Balon who had defied her own father's crown. Asha's laugh was like salt spray against slate rock. She teased Arya about her toothpick sword, then offered advice on stabbing men through chainmail gaps. At Moat Cailin, Arya stood atop a battlement watching the swamps of the neck swallow sunset. Frogs croaked dirges. Jon joined her, cloak whipping. Below, Stannis Smith's hammered iron, mending links, forging arrowheads from repurposed horseshoes. The glow gilded the flooded causeway. "We march at first thaw," John said. "Scouts say deep snowdrifts hamper Bolton outriders. Ice but not water lines their moat. The castle's wells freeze nightly. Hunger weakens them. Wow! You want me inside before they starve." She traced the crenellation's frost. Described the sally port again. John recounted. Like an hidden door beneath the Hunter's Walk rampart, once used by kennel masters exercising hounds. She knew it. Old Nan scolded Bran for crawling out that very postern in chase of a squirrel. The memory stung. "I'll guide 6 men," she said, voice steady. "We open gates from within, or ignite granaries. You storm. Down hill. I wish you'd let me go in your place. If you die, Night's Watch loses its lord. Stannis loses his bridge to the wall. I'm expendable." Anger flashed. "No Stark is expendable." "Robb was," she whispered, then turned away. "I'll return." 2 nights later, under near full moon, Arya and her infiltration team, a wraith-like spearman named Kedge White-Eye, Asha Greyjoy, 3 of Joan's best climbers, and a silent water dancer from Bravos called Chorus, paddled skiffs along the snow-clogged moat. Boreal wind sheared off the surface in eddies. Ice scraped hulls like claws. They beached beneath the shadow of Winterfell's outer ring. The ash-gray stone looked spectral, windows gaping black. No torchlight patrolled. Bolton's men trusted winter more than walls. Kedge found the latch drowned in rime. Asha pried with a dirk, snapping brittle iron, and the door yawned inward, coughing stale kennel musk. They slipped through. Inside, corridors echoed their breath. Bones of hounds littered the floor. Arya's foot cracked a skull half buried in straw. She led them left, up a corkscrew stair to the old servants' gallery where once she'd spied on father's meetings for sport. Cobwebs draped balconies like torn banners. Farther on, a faint glow pulsed under the great hall doors. Bolton's feasting, perhaps. Despite Seeger rations, Roose would keep his war council pinned to chairs with illusions of plenty. They skirted the hall, creeping along twisted passageways, until they reached the gatehouse tower. 2 guards lolled by brazier, half-dozing gate. Corys glided ahead, steel whispering from its sheath. A flick. The first man slumped, throat blossoming. Kedge lunged from shadow, hell striking the second's temple. No cry. They dragged bodies behind grain sacks. Asha hoisted the winch lever. Chains rattled as portcullis gears engaged. Outside, moonlit swirls revealed Stannis' vanguard, assembled like silent statues. Signals blinked. Mirror heliographs catching torchlight. Arya's pulse raced. She dashed to the rampart walkway, peered down. No alarm sounded yet. Corys tapped her arm, gesturing, roofline above full of murder holes. Archers could fill the courtyard once gates opened if alerted. Arya knelt, inhaled cold air so deeply it ached. "We need roof control." "Stairwell, over kitchen," Kedge mouthed. They moved. Passage led them beneath a low arch smelling of old grease. Halfway through, a door banged open ahead, 2 Bolton men arguing about thaw rations. The infiltrators froze. Arya stepped forward before thought. "Captain wants you at the catwalk," she barked, imitating the gruff accent she'd heard from prisoners. "Now." One guard squinted. "Whose orders?" She shrugged like a bored sentry. "Sir Theon's." "Theon's drunk." He laughed. "Both of you." But they turned, muttering, shuffling away. Arya exhaled slow. They climbed narrow stairs to roofline. Moon-glazed snow on slate shingles. 6 archers lay prone under awning. Bows strung but shoulders slack. Asha's axe made swift work of 2. Kedge and Corys dispatched the rest with muffled gurgles. Blood steamed into ruts where summer rain once sluiced. Arya stared down at one archer's face. He looked 14, ginger lashes, frost-rimmed. But he wore Bolton colors. Names on her list rarely age. They exist only as debts. Below, portcullis finished its rise, drawbar clattered free. Then horns blared outside, deep and triumphant. Stannis' cavalry surged, hooves churning frost. Ziga ladders rolled. Flaming pitch balls soared over the inner keep, trailing sparks. The battle for Winterfell erupted like a hymn cut by daggers. Bolton men poured into yards, some half-armored, others clutching spoons, confusion splattering across their faces. Arya knocked arrow from a fallen quiver and picked targets. A captain rallying crossbowmen. Loose arrow through neck. A hornblower. Loose shoulder. A standard-bearer dragging the flayed man banner. 2 arrows drop him. Her arms vibrated from the force of each release. Each impact sang through bone. Then a shriek tore from the night. A bell's clang twisted into human voice. Ramsay Bolton stormed onto the battlement opposite. Black armor studded with dog-shaped rivets, hair wild. He pointed at her with a serrated dirk. "Wolf bitch!" Arrows zipped. She rolled aside, felt Fletch's sliced cheek. Kedja lunged to cover, but took a quarrel square in chest, crumpling. Rage erupted through her veins, hotter than forge fire. She rose behind Chimney Stone. Ramsay advanced, 2 hounds at his heels, their muzzles caged and spiked. "I owe your brother a wedding gift," he snarled across the gap. "You can be it." Flayed nice and slow, hear the stark line scream. Moonlight glinted on his eyes, 2 chips of shattered ice. Behind him, Stannis' banners breached the second level. Screams erupted. A bronze ram hammered the keep doors. Chaos raged. Asha screamed something and hurled axe. It sailed wide. Ramsay released his first hound. The beast bounded across roof tiles, foam flecking muzzle. Arya backstepped, braced, waited till it lunged, then thrust needle upward into the soft underjaw, twisting. Hot blood fanned her face. The carcass skidded, hind legs kicking. She wrenched blade free. Ramsay laughed, a high keening. "Good. Bite me." He flicked his dirk in salute, advanced nimble despite pauldrons shaped like flayed arms. Arya's heartbeat slowed, world tunneled. She remembered Sirio's lessons. Water dancing where heavy armor cannot. She sidestepped, letting him close. He feinted left, slashed. She parried, sparks kissing steel. His strength jarred her shoulder. She flowed away, slashed his thigh seam. Armor deflected. Dirk flicked near her ear. Pain bit. Warm trickled down neck. He grinned shark-like. She circled Chimney, eyes never leaving his. Noise of battle shrank to pulse beats. She feigned stumble. He lunged for kill. She dove, sliding between his legs on icy slate. Scored an upward slash across his inner thigh where Grieve met codplate. Blood spurted. Ramsay roared, spun, but she already sprang up, slicing again at armpit gap. He staggered, clutching wound. "Little cunt." He hurled dirk. She swayed aside, but blade grazed ribs. Ramsay drew short sword, bellowed, charged. She retreated to edge where roof slanted into courtyard. Feet scrabbled. He raised sword overhead. An arrow thudded into his right eye. Ramsay stopped mid-swing, expression frozen. He toppled backward, sword clattered. Behind him, atop adjacent battlement, stood Jon Snow, longbow in hand, eyes dark and calm. Ghost paced at his heels, muzzle stained red. Ramsay's body slid, bounced, disappeared into darkness. Arya exhaled. The hound still alive slunk, whined, then dove off parapet. She collapsed to knees, lungs heaving. Asha joined, hauling her up. "Well done, wolf cub." She bound Arya's neck with torn cloak strip. Arya barely felt it. Down in courtyard, Stannis' voice shattered the din. "Yield or burn." Flint men from Widow's Watch poured through sundered gate. Umbers roared. Frey turncloaks threw swords down. In minutes, Winterfell's keep surrendered. Roose Bolton never appeared. Later found garroted in his solar. One perfect crimson line under his chin. Some whispered Melisandre's shadow did it. Others that Theon Greyjoy repaid his tormentor before escaping. The truth mattered little. The flayed man banners were torn, fed to Ghost and the northern hounds. Dawn lit Winterfell's ramparts for first time, free of enemy banners since its sack. Snow sparkled on broken tiles like powdered diamonds. Smoke drifted gentle from collapsed smithy, mingling with the scent of pine. Arya stood beside Jon in the godswood. The heart tree's red leaves trembled as if sighing. Crimson sap oozed from the carved face, tears for the dead. They knelt. "I kept my promise," Jon whispered, touching his direwolf hilt sword to frozen earth. "Winterfell endures." Arya ran fingertips over Needle's pommel, feeling ridges wear smooth with time. "One list shorter," she murmured. She did not smile. Lists rarely rewarded joy, only balance. Later, Stannis held court in the great hall. Roof patched with tarps, but candles blazed. He named Jon, Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North, in exchange for fealty. Jon refused the title, citing his vows. Yet the crownless men of the North banged pommels to stone and shouted Stark. So, Stannis looked to Arya. "You are next of Ned's line present," he said. "Winterfell requires a Stark." Wind snarled through broken shutters. Every gaze pinned her. Mormont, Karstark deserters returned. Men once sworn to Bolton now kneeling for pardon. Even Melisandre weighed her with ember eyes. She remembered father's smile in Godswood light. Robb's hand on her head swearing to protect. Mother's hugs that smelled of lilac. She thought of titles and their weight. Of chains disguised as silver. She inhaled. "I will hold Winterfell," she said, voice steady, "until Bran or Rickon returns." A hush, then cheers. "But I will hold it as Arya Stark, not as queen or lady. A wolf has no need for crown." She met Stannis' gaze. "Swear to rebuild these lands, to shelter the small folk winter kills first, and I'll guard the north for you until the dead lie quiet." Stannis considered, jaw ticking. At last he nodded. So spake. So sealed. And thus, under a roof still scar-scorched, the North's new pact formed. A girl forged by flight and fire would watch her home. A king without a throne would warn its defense, and a lord once bastard would patrol the wall against a frost deeper than politics. The banners would change, as banners always do, but the tree in the godswood remembered. That night, when all speeches died and mead casks drained, Arya stood atop the battlements alone. Moonlight silvered the courtyard where men hammered new timbers, where Maester Wolkan tended wounded of friend and foe alike. She listened. No screams, no traitors laughing. Just the murmuring hush of snowfall. A soft crunch announced to Jon. He draped a patchwork cloak over her shoulders, the same quilt of greens and grays that once covered Bran's bed when he was feverish. "Father's," he said. Maester Luwin kept it, smuggled south with Osha when she fled. Found it among Ramsay's stores. Arya's throat closed. She buried her face in wool smelling faintly of cedar and smoke, as if Winterfell's old hearth still lived within threads. Snow gusted. They stood side by side, silent. Below, in a courtyard corner, Melisandre raised her palms over a brazier. Flames leapt, swirling into shapes. Direwolf, stag, lion, dragon, each dissolving into cinders that the wind carried skyward. Arya watched until embers vanished among stars. Vengeance tasted of ash and iron. Yet hope tasted of pine smoke and fresh fallen snow. Winter would be long. Walls still needed stones. Ghosts still stalked beyond the world's northern edge. But the pack was whole again. Though smaller, though scarred. And in the hush between heartbeats, Arya Stark heard her father's words not as lament but as vow. The man who passes sentence should swing the sword. She had swung, and would again, whenever justice demanded. Until then, she would keep her blade honed, her eyes open, her memories sharp as winter night. For though wolves healed, they never forgot the taste of blood or the scent of home. Dawn arrived like a pale promise, brushing the wall's distant crown with fragile rose. Arya lifted her face to the cold light. Behind her, Winterfell breathed, broken but alive, its stones humming an old song of resilience. She closed her eyes and listened, as the first ravens of morning took flight toward distant wars, carrying news that the North remembered its name. Ka. Wind keened through the shattered arches of Winterfell's broken sept. brushing drifts of powdery snow along the cracked floor tiles, the way a harpist coaxes a mournful chord from a single trembling string. Lanterns burned low in the keep proper, sending diluted amber through arrow slits and casting slow-moving shadows over the courtyard, where Stannis Baratheon's soldiers, now snow-streaked phantoms in mismatched plate, labored to clear rubble from the old armory's fallen roof. Above them a pale morning sun gathered its courage behind a curtain of cirrus, painting the sky a fraudulent blue that promised warmth, but delivered only clarity. The cold remained, pure and unbending, as though the castle itself were still deciding whether to accept or reject the life stirring once again within its walls. Arya stood on the battlements wrapped in her father's patchwork cloak, watching masons from Barrowton haul lime mortar up pulley towers, while Mormont men braced timbers to shore the library tower. The work looked both impossibly delicate and brutally simple. Place a stone, wedge a brace, smear frost-chilled mortar with stiff trowels until a new face of Winterfell grew over the wreckage of the old. She admired their stoic patience, each action thin as a thread, yet together forming the tapestry of survival. And she wondered if her life could be rebuilt the same way, stone by careful stone, until no one could see the cracks. Below, the Godswood's red leaves rustled softly, despite the still air, as if the weirwood itself were whispering encouragement to every hammerstroke. Jon had appointed a dozen green boys to fetch buckets of steaming water from the new kitchens for the workers. But half the time, Arya caught the lads sneaking away to kneel under that sacred tree instead. She felt the pull herself, an ache that began between her ribs whenever she looked upon the rough, tear-stained face carved in heartwood. But she denied it for now. There were too many tasks, too many ghosts. Stannis had pitched his own pavilion beyond the breach in the eastern curtain wall, preferring canvas grim with soot to any chamber that had once belonged to Bolton or Greyjoy. For him, the castle's memory was poisoned. For Arya, it was medicine. Bitter, but necessary. Snow crunched behind her, and she turned to see Melisandre emerging from a stairwell. Scarlet silks floating around her like smoke-made cloth. The Red Woman's feet left no prints, a thing Arya tried not to notice but could not ignore. And her eyes burned in the morning gloom, with an inner light that set Arya's hackles on edge. "You seek balance," Melisandre said softly, studying the castle's ragged silhouette. "Stone for bone, timber for sinew. But balance is seldom found in rebuilding what was." Nanosanwa. Arya's hand slipped to Needle's worn grip, though she made no move to draw. "Stone is what I have," she answered. "I'll start there." A wise choice. The priestess extended a gloved hand, letting snowflakes dissolve against the red fabric. "Winter is a crucible. It reveals the iron hidden within raw ore. I've had my fill of crucibles." Melisandre smiled, a flicker of white cresting over the dark sea of her lips. "The forge has only begun, child. Ice and fire clash yet again, and you stand at their meeting point." She inclined her head toward the distant horizon. There, beyond the line of pine and frost-silvered field, a faint shimmer hinted at the wall's glacial mirage. When the snowflakes turn to spears, you will remember this day and wonder whether these fragile walls can withstand the real storm. With that, she drifted away, leaving behind the faint scent of myrrh and smoke. Arya clenched her teeth. The Red Woman's pronouncements bothered her less for their portent, and more because they echoed truths Arya already feared. Winterfell's new walls would not be finished before the others descended, if they truly existed as Jon and Stannis claimed. She had seen worse than ghosts these past seasons. Seen living men do carnage that might shame whites. But she trusted Jon's eyes, and she trusted ghosts' growls. When she descended the tower stair, hammer blows reverberated up the stone like hearts beating too loudly in a shared chest. The kitchens exuded warmth. Fatbacks sizzled on iron griddles, while onions caramelized into sweet gold. Gage's apprentice, a stout boy called Nall with freckles like splattered mud, ladled stewed oats into trenchers for the night watch rotation. Arya snagged a bowl, sprinkled salt, and wolfed it down on the walk to the council chamber, a narrower solar just off the great hall, its roof patched with fresh beams trimmed from a godswood beech struck by lightning 2 summers earlier. Inside, Jon bent over a table strewn with vellum. Grain tallies from deepwood mud, casualty rolls, letters sealed with wax the color of bruises. Maester Walken sat opposite, his quill scratching in steady strokes, while Sir Justin Massey pored over lists of men fit for patrol. In the corner, Asha Greyjoy sharpened a short-bladed axe, whetstone rasping like distant surf. Asha swears her Uncle Victorian hovers off the coast near Bear Island, Jon said as Arya entered, gesturing to a crude charcoal map. If he attempts a landing, we'll need eyes in the skerries. And swords, Asha added, her grin flecked with iron filings. Preferably ones that don't rust at the first sniff of sea spray. Arya peered at the charcoal lines. Lady Meg Mormont has garrisons at Stony Shore and Stone Tree. They'll hold. If they know who commands them, Walken murmured. Ravens from Bear Island are scarce this winter. We can't guard every coastline, Jon said, pushing a lock of hair from his eyes. Nor every pass through the Wolf's Wood. Stannis reinforcements marched south this morning to secure the King's Road. That leaves Winterfell with 200 sworn swords, 80 Watch Brothers, and the Manderley levies. And me, Arya said. And you, Jon conceded with a small smile. But even a Stark stubbornness won't patch a wall faster than mortar can cure. We have 3 weeks at most before the first real storm. Arya traced a finger along the torn edge of Winterfell's perimeter sketch. If the Ice Fiends come, walls won't matter. Valyrian steel does. Dragonglass does. Nah. Massey, still unaccustomed to Stark bluntness, lifted a brow. Stannis sent ships to Dragonstone to mine obsidian, but most of the Isle's storerooms were pillaged by sell sales after the Tyrell blockade. The loads are thin. Thin is better than empty. Arya folded arms across her chest. We melt the glass, cast arrowheads. Every archer in the north can carry 3. Fire arrows? Asha asked, flipping her axe to inspect the fuller. Obsidian, not iron. Arya met her gaze. Sharp enough to cut a White's connection to its master. If the tales are true. Walken nodded slowly. Septon Barth claimed dragonglass unknits the necromancer's glamour. We're done with tales and claims, Jon cut in. Voice low but hard. We start mining north of the wall. There are caves beneath Eastwatch with veins of black glass thick as Beric Dondarrion's accent. Lord Commander Mormont never reached them before the mutiny. We'll try now. I leave tonight with a ranging party. Sir Justin commands Winterfell until I return. Arya's heart lurched. She had known Jon would leave. He was Night's Watch. He belonged to the Wall. But hearing it aloud still felt like frost tightening over bone. How long? She asked. A fortnight. Joan's eyes held hers, steady as oaths. Maybe 3. If I'm not back by the new moon, assume I failed. Then we ride north ourselves, Arya finished for him. He touched her elbow, brief but fierce. You guard our home, little sister. That's enough. After council, Arya walked with Asha to the training yard to watch Manderley boys spar with pikes. Snow flurries darted through the air like anxious white moths. Whenever a breeze lifted her cloak, Arya caught faint lilac and ash smells. Memories buried in father's fabric. You fear for him, Asha said quietly, twirling her axe so the edge flashed. I've lost too many, and gained a fortress. The Ironborn woman gestured to the keep. Holds more ghosts than sailors in Naga's ribs, but ghosts cannot bleed you. Arya scoffed. Tell that to the Kingslayer's shade. Asha chuckled. Perhaps ghosts can won pride. She grew sober. Still, your brother's sword arm is sure. I've watched him. He fights like a man who regrets every kill yet kills cleaner for it. Nil. That's the Stark in him. Arya hefted a practice spear and spun it through a pattern she'd learned from a Pentoshi refugee outside River Run. Regret is our groom. Asha nodded, then gave a sly smirk. But you, little wolf, don't groom regret. You ride it. Arya did not reply. That night, feasting resumed in the repaired portion of the hall. The new roof beams smelled of fresh pitch, and torches burned bright enough that one could almost forget the char scars still spiderwebbing the stone. Stannis ate alone at a sideboard, gnawing mutton with grim efficiency. Selyse knelt before Melisandre at the foot of the dais, hands clasped, eyes shining with zeal. She traced her finger over a dog-eared copy of the Song of the Three Sisters, while her friend Patchface juggled dried apples in the aisle, bells tinkling softly. John, already armored for the ranging, stood when Arya entered. He bowed his head in farewell, then strode from the hall at the head of a double column of black-cloaked rangers. Ghost padded last, pausing only to nudge Arya's knuckles before disappearing into night. Long after the doors sealed, Arya remained at the high table, sipping watered wine and listening to the rhythms of a keep in uneasy revival. The minstrels plucked half-hearted chords. The servants whispered about what lurked beyond the shivering sea. She thought of Sandor Clegane, rumored dead, then alive, then dead again, and of Sansa in King's Landing, or maybe the Vale. She wondered if Sansa would have accepted Stannis' offer of rule, or if she too would have declined crowns in favor of claws. Days blurred into a tapestry of labor. Arya inspected arrow forges, trained with Mormont veterans, oversaw sowing of spring oats in the vegetable gardens south of the Hunter's Gate. She refused the maester's suggestion of a lady's retinue. Instead, she rode daily along the broken perimeter, mapping each gap. She slept little, haunted by dreams of blue-eyed giants wading through drifts taller than towers. Yet hope threaded her exhaustion. With every stone set, Winterfell felt less like a tomb and more like a beating heart. On the 13th night of Jon's absence, howling winds proclaimed a blizzard's onset. Snow hammered battlements. The sky vanished into a swirl of blind white. Torches were shielded, gates barred, watch rotations doubled. Sentries atop the eastern rampart reported odd flickers beyond the tree line, coast lanterns bobbing in the storm. Wolves bayed. By midnight, the glassy moon was only a pale smudge behind the maelstrom. Arya stood at the kennel door, fingers numb even through fur gloves. Every instinct screamed that something more than snow stalked the dark. She called for archers to take positions above the gatehouse, and for smiths to heat iron cauldrons in case pitch was needed. The men obeyed, though a few cast uneasy glances. Perhaps they sensed her fear and took it for second sight. Just before dawn, the winds stilled. Snow hung in the air like floating feathers, suspended by some unseen enchantment. An unnatural hush blanketed the yards. No clank of chain, no stamp of armored boots, only the faint murmur of torch fire. Arya peered through the murder hole above the main gate. Shapes moved beyond frozen moat. A column of figures, shambling, slowed by drifts. Their silhouettes wavered between man and monster. Limbs elongated, postures broken at unnatural angles. Eyes glowed the color of a glacier's heart. Whites. She forced a steady breath. "Archers, knock dragon glass arrows," she ordered. Her voice did not tremble. She raised a horn to her lips and sounded two blasts. The signal Jon taught her. The dead are near. A third blast would mean others themselves walked. The horn's mournful cry rolled across the keep, echoing through corridors, waking men from bunks. Obsidian points glinted black in the torchlight as archers drew. The whites kept coming. Silent as snowfall, relentless as tide. No others yet, but she could almost feel their cold observance somewhere behind the wall of white. "Loose!" she shouted. A storm of black-tipped shafts hissed through the gate slits. The first rank of whites crumpled simultaneously, strings of blue light flickering inside their chests before extinguishing like guttering candles. Others stumbled over them, only to be cut down by the next volley. Above, Manderley ballistae clacked, hurling canisters of clay, packed with obsidian shards that shattered on impact, turning the snow into a deadly mosaic. Yet they kept advancing. 10 fell, 20. But there were always more, rising from drifts as if birthed by winter itself. Arya's breath fogged before her face. She counted arrows. Too few. Then a horn answered from the dark beyond the moat. One long, booming note. A second. A third. Arya's heart thumped. Did Jon return? She peered harder. Shadows parted, and a line of living men emerged, torches blazing. At their head rode Jon Snow, eyes like burnt embers beneath a rim of hoarfrost on his beard. Behind him, brothers of the Watch dragged sledges laden with crates. Ravens soared overhead, cawing triumph. Jon raised Longclaw and roared. His voice cut through the hush. For the living, Black cloaks surged forward, forming wedge around the sledges. Rangers hurled clay spheres into the white masses. The spheres erupted with green fire. Wildfire, mixed with dragonglass dust methane, ignited in the shards, sending gouts of emerald flame that melted snow and whites alike. The monsters shrieked without throats, bodies disintegrating to ash. Arya ordered the gates unbarred. Stannis' men poured out to flank Jones' wedge, ironclad and furious. The battle unfolded in eerie silence, save the crackle of wildfire and the crunch of armored boots on crusted snow. By sunrise, the last white collapsed, and those too distant for dragonglass arrows staggered away into the deep forest. Their glowing eyes, extinguishing like lanterns, swiftly shuttered. Inside the hall, Jon stood before Arya, streaked with soot, eyes bloodshot. She threw her arms around him. For a moment, he held her as a brother only holds a sister who is both memory and future. Then they parted, silent understanding passing between them. The Rangers stacked obsidian crates near the hearth. Melisandre oversaw distribution, her eyes reflecting green tongues of fire. "We found the caverns," Jon told the assembled captains. "Enough dragonglass for a war, but the veins run deep. Mining teams need time." And the others learned we found it. They sent a greeting. "Let us return our greeting," Stannis said, unsheathing Lightbringer. The blade's faint glow pulsed as if stirred in blood. "We march north at first thaw. Destroy the Night King on his throne. End this long night before it begins." Jon shook his head. "We can't fight them in their cradle. They own the cold, the dark, the very storms. We must hold here, draw them south to where the wall's runes still linger. Let them break themselves against fire and stone." Stannis' jaw tightened. "A man who waits for doom invites it. A man who rushes into a blizzard ends in white silence," Jon countered. They argued deep into evening, strategy lines drawn in frost on the council table. Arya listened, weighing each point, until at last she stepped forward. "We build a trap," she said. Both men turned. "A trap?" Stannis' brows knitted. Arya pointed to the map. "There's an old weirwood grove half a league north of Winterfell, where hot springs rise from fissures. The earth there never freezes fully. The water carves channels under the snow. We dig trenches, fill them with oil and dragonglass spikes. We station archers on the ridges, lure the whites with a feigned retreat. When they charge the grove, we light the oil. Fire will burn beneath and above. Glass will pierce what flame misses." Walken looked thoughtful. Old miners called those fissures dragon veins. The steam could carry fire fumes far through tunnels. Stannis tapped the map. "And the living? How do we keep your men from burning alongside their foes?" "Walk where the earth is cold," Arya said. "I know that grove. My brothers and I hunted hares there as children. There's a ridge path covered in basalt no snow ever blankets. The whites don't reason. They follow heat and flesh. We exit along the ridge once they're chasing." Jon eyed her. "You'd lead the vanguard." "I will," she confirmed. Stannis considered. "Risky. But if it works, we cull their numbers before they test the walls." Jon rolled a dragonglass shard between his fingers. "And if an other comes, we save Valyrian steel for that," she replied, looking at Longclaw. "And Lightbringer." Plans unfurled like tattooed parchment. Engineers mapping trenches, miners driving stakes into muddy banks where boiling water hissed, archers feathering new arrows with goose quills soaked in oil, smiths riveting brush hooks onto oak poles so fire could be dragged across oily snow. The keep bustled day and night, lanterns flickering in every tower while hammers chimed like temple bells. Arya spent mornings in the grove guiding trench lines, afternoons on ramparts drilling Manderley recruits, nights in the smithy shaping needles twin from melted dragonglass, thin, lethal, baptized in obsidian dust that clung like midnight dew. She named the new blade Shadowpoint. During one chill dusk, she perched on the broken tower's balcony, watching a line of refugees shuffle through the gate. Ragged shepherds, crofter women clutching infants, gray-bearded septons leaning on makeshift staves. Winter had chased them from crofts. Rumors of the dead drove them south. Arya ordered broth ready at the kitchens and straw cushions in the guard dormitories. When she stooped to lift a toddler from her mother's weary arms, the child's small fingers brushed the direwolf-stitched patch on her cloak, and the boy smiled through cracked lips. Later, by the library's refurbished hearth, she helped Shireen teach half a dozen children the names of Westeros rivers using hand-carved blocks. Shireen's grayscale scar looked less frightening up close. Arya traced the raised skin with gentle curiosity and felt nothing but admiration for the girl's perseverance. The children laughed when Patchface balanced a teapot on his head and sang, "Under the sea, the snows are green, and skeleton fish swim serene." Even in war, there were bubbles of innocence. Yet the war returned each dawn. Scout reports spoke of white walkers glimpsed near Last River, icy silhouettes on mooseback driving columns of shambling corpses. The frozen shore clan said unnatural silence preceded them, a hush so thick it crushed the mind. Stannis quartermasters rationed oats. The mills froze, stones grinding slower. Food lines lengthened. Fear seeped beneath doorframes like drifting snow. Arya walked the corridors at night, listening to men sharpen blades in restless vigil. She murmured their names under breath, remembering Jaqain's ledger of debts, reminding herself these fighters were lives, not numbers. At last the new moon arrived. Jon stood on the battlements with Arya, overlooking the moonless black smeared with smoldering torches. They spoke softly. "I leave at first light for Eastwatch." She swallowed. Again, "The rangers there need reinforcement. Tormund Giantsbane claims a shadow of ice moves beyond Hardhome, an army the width of the weeping water. If it turns inland, we'll be flanked." "Nahu." Arya exhaled a plume of frost. "You keep running toward the dark." He touched her cheek. "Someone must." She caught his wrist. "Come back. Our plan depends on you." He nodded solemnly, then descended the stair. Ghost lingered, eyes luminous. Arya knelt, pressed her forehead to the wolf's. "Watch him," she whispered. Ghost licked her nose, then bounded after his master. 3 dawns later, snow began to fall sideways, pelted by a wind that smelled of iron shavings and ice lilies. Ravens shrieked from ramparts, then dropped silent, frozen mid-cry. A horn blast echoed down from the north ridge. 1, 2, 3. The others had arrived. Within minutes, the trenches around the grove hissed with boiling springs, steam billowing. Archers took positions. Pikemen lined the ridge, dragonglass points glinting. Arya stood at the spearhead, shadow point strapped across her back, needle in hand. Beside her, Asha twirled twin hatchets. Sir Dinis Mallister adjusted his ridged pauldrons. Melisandre hovered behind, eyes aflame. Through the snow curtain came the army of night. 1,000 whites, maybe more. Soldiers long dead, mothers still clutching infants, bears ripped from dens, a woolly mammoth skeleton fused with ice. At their center rode another on a mount of marrow-pale flesh. Armor crystalline, sword a shard of night. Its eyes glowed frost blue, devouring torchlight. Arya's pulse thudded. She raised needle and shouted into the gale. "For Winterfell." A roar answered. "Stark, Baratheon, Mormont, watch." They advanced down the basalt spine, drawing the dead toward the steaming trenches. Whites howled in silence. Hunger carved into every empty socket. At 20 paces Arya spun, feigned panic, and sprinted back along the basalt. The formation followed her, falling into practiced retreat. The whites surged, crowding into the groove of warmth that led across hidden pits. Arrows streaked overhead, embedding obsidian shafts in rotted chests. Melisandre lifted her arms. From the trench edges, oil ignited, skeins of blue-orange flame cascading along channels, catching the rising steam. A roar of heat whooshed skyward, blasting the first ranks to cinders. But the others pressed. Ice swords sheared flaming stakes, snuffing them. The lead other raised its blade, pointing at Arya. Frost spidered across the basalt in a streak racing toward her boots. She leapt aside as the road itself froze slick. Mormont pikemen met the next wave, shattered whites crumbling like brittle bone under dragonglass. Yet the other advanced untouched. It swung once. 3 pikemen fell, armor encrusted with rime that crept inward. Icing blood. Arya ducked a second strike, rolled, came up beside Sir Denis. He thrust his dragonglass spear. The other parried, shaft exploding to obsidian dust. It slashed again, driving back 2 more. Fear flicked through Arya's veins, hot, then cold. She drew shadow point. It shimmered black in the fire glow. She stepped in low, darting for the knee gap. The other pivoted with inhuman grace, its sword arced at her head. She raised the dragonglass. Both blades met, and an ear-splitting scream rang out as the other's crystal sword erupted into shards, the clash sending a shock wave of icy wind that snuffed half the torches. Stunned, the other reeled. Arya slashed, shadow point carving through the crystal breastplate. Fractures spidered. The creature's eyes widened in what might have been surprise. It opened its mouth, but made no sound. Then it shattered, falling into glittering fragments that melted into steam before they hit the ground. A silence followed, vast. Whites directly linked to that other collapsed lifeless. Those beyond hesitated, looking skyward as if listening for lost commands. Asha bawled a war cry and charged into their flank. Momentum returned. With renewed fury, the living pressed, driving the dead into pits of flame. Dragons of steam and fire rose, devouring their breath. By dusk, the grove lay charred black around turquoise pools of still-boiling spring water. Steam drifted over a field of melted snow and corpses. Surviving whites limped back into the tree line, leaderless, their blue eyes dim. Arya leaned on Needle, panting, hair singed. Her face was speckled with frozen sweat and ash. She glanced at Shadow Point's edge. The dragonglass hardly nicked. Stannis approached, Lightbringer dull in twilight. The king bowed his head to her. "Well struck, Lady Stark." "Struck for all of us," she corrected, but her lips twitched in faint pride. Melisandre came behind, her smile sharper than flame. "The Lord of Light guided your hand." Arya sheathed both blades, meeting the woman's gaze. "My hands guide themselves." The Red Woman only nodded, as though that answer too served her god. They counted their dead, 38 men, 2 women, and 20 horses. The others' fragments were gathered by maesters who sealed them in lead boxes, unsure whether the frozen glitter still bore hidden curses. Scouts reported no further sight of whites that night. The enemy had retreated. Whether to regroup or to mourn, no one knew. Winterfell's fields, churned by heat, refroze into sheets so glassy they reflected the moons. Fires were stoked in every hearth. The wounded were fed mulled wine laced with honey and poppy. Arya stripped her armor under the watchful gaze of a dozen grooms in the great courtyard. When she removed Father's cloak, patches of ice fell away where sweat had frozen. Yet beneath, the wool smelled of smoke and pine and the faintest memory of Ned Stark's arms. She hugged it close for a breath. Later, in the quiet of her chambers, on Sansa's walls hung now with new tapestries showing wolves running under stars. Jon found her staring at the heart-shaped window pane, frost etching filigree across its diamond lead. He looked exhausted, a smudge of ash across his jaw. But his eyes held that quiet mountain resolve she had always trusted. "You killed an other," he said with both awe and sorrow. "I never doubted you could." "Killed one," she corrected softly. "There are more, many more." "Yes," Jon sighed. "And each commands a legion. But today we learned they can die to dragonglass forged by Winterfell smiths." "Learn?" "Tomorrow they'll learn faster. Tomorrow we'll learn faster still." He stepped forward and placed something in her palm. An old king's handpin of black iron, half melted, Tywin's brooch perhaps, recovered from King's Landing after his death. "Keep this," Jon said. "A reminder that men of ice and men of gold fall the same." Arya weighed the pin, then set it on the windowsill where starlight kissed the iron. "Fall they do," she agreed. "But the wall still stands, and snow still falls, and we still fight." She looked at him and there was fire in her eyes to match the wind outside. "And we will keep standing, brother, until the snow melts or the sun burns out." He smiled. Small, weary, but true. He opened the door to leave, then paused. "Father always believed in second chances," he said. "I never understood why, until today." Arya tilted her head. John gestured toward the courtyard where people moved like candle shadows across packed ice. Mormonts preparing a pyre. Baratheon men stacking dragon glass crates. Stable boys coaxing exhausted mounts into warm stalls. "All these souls," he said, "vengeance has gathered them. But hope holds them together." He met her gaze. "You hold them together, Arya." When he left, the room fell still, save for the whistle of wind between crannied stones. Arya placed needle on its bracket, laid shadow point beside it. She shrugged on father's cloak again, and stepped onto the balcony facing the godswood. Moonlight silvered the leaves. The heart tree's eyes seemed less sorrowful, more watchful. She closed her own eyes and breathed in frost and pine and distant smoke. Her list had grown shorter. Joffrey dead. Cersei lost to her own madness. Ilyn Payne still unaccounted for. Walder Frey still breathing across cold rivers. There were debts yet to claim, but for tonight, she allowed herself a rare stillness. She listened to Winterfell's myriad voices, hammers, hooves, laughter muffled by stone. This song had been silenced too long, and now it rose, a rough but honest melody threading through the ruin and the night. Somewhere in the beyond, the Night King gathered his shards of power. But here, the living stitched history anew, seam by seam, into banners that would not burn easily. She clenched the cloak, feeling every patch like a memory square. The brown of Winterfell's soil after rain, the green of the godswood moss, the navy of the sky at dusk when Bran used to dream of flight. They formed a map of where she'd been and where she must go. She turned back inside, ready for sleep. Tomorrow the trenches would be deepened, the obsidian arrows fletched anew, the refugees assigned beds in the rebuilt barracks. Tomorrow they would plan again, and when the next night brought terror in white armor, she would meet it under winter's pale torches, steel in hand, ghosts at her back, and a pack more stubborn than death. For the North remembered, and so did she. Ka. The lanterns along Winterfell's northern parapet had guttered down to stunted tongues of blue flame, but Arya remained atop the rampart until the final wick surrendered, letting ice-bright starlight reclaim the wall. Sleep tugged at her eyes with the patience of a cat needing a pillow, yet unease kept her spine rigid. Every sense felt sharpened beyond comfort, as if her body still thrummed with the dead odor's last echo. The shrill shiver of crystal exploding under shadow point, the flash of frost that had licked her lashes before melting in the heat of victory. Men sang in the lower yard, low, rough, off-key, and the sound should have comforted her, confirmation that lungs still drew breath in Winterfell's cold belly. But with each note, she imagined the singers turning to snow, flakes sloughing from cheekbones, until only mute skulls remained. The dead were learning, Stannis claimed, and every lesson they took was etched in bone and ice. She turned away, descending by the narrow stair where torch jars wept resin. The air smelled of pine pitch and forge smoke. Below, the bailey resembled a wounded animal splinted in too many places. Scaffolds hugged each tower, beams braced door lintels, and half-finished hardings skirted the curtain walls in jagged intervals. Masons trudged past her dragging sleds of shale. They muttered greetings. "My lady, Lady Arya," words she still hadn't grown comfortable hearing. She nodded each time, remembering faces, weighing names. Jon had said leadership lived in details, and she'd sworn to know them. Near the smithy, sparks spun in bright swarms around Tobho Mott's improvised forge. He barked at apprentices shaping obsidian arrowheads, the curses in Myrish rolling like river stones. Arya paused long enough to inspect a fresh batch. Black glass glinting with the faintest sunset sheen inside refracted planes. The points were narrower now, the inlet grooves deeper, exactly as Maester Wolkin's diagrams demanded. She touched one, felt the coldness of volcanic birth, and pictured it humming through the air into a white's hollow eye. That image settled her restlessness better than song ever could. In the new library tower, Sir Davos Seaworth plotted supply routes by lamplight, frowning at maps bleached by candle smoke. The Onion Knight looked up when she entered, pushing his ink-smudged spectacles higher on his nose. He spoke as if mid-conversation, grateful for any listener. Eastwatch's grain barge had not returned. Deepwood-motted smoked fish convoy was overdue, and white owl ravens reported frost quakes along the shivering sea cliffs. Arya studied the ledger. Numbers bled across margins like retreating waves. Even with Stannis drilling discipline, Winterfell consumed stores faster than wagons could arrive. Soldiers worked. Soldiers ate. Refugees devoured double, arriving half-starved. Davos traced a salt-stained finger along the coast of the Bight, suggesting icebreakers rowed by Ironborn might slip through brine slush if winds held. Arya considered. She trusted Asha, but Ironborn loyalty to anybody but themselves remained as slippery as sea spray. Still, the map showed little choice. Inland roads were choked, and every owl said the same. Ice deeper, wolves hungrier. No game left. She authorized the sortie, stamping the parchment with the direwolf sigil Jon had left her. Davos' sigh of relief crested into another worry. Horses dying of chill in the half-rebuilt stables, leathers freezing to their hides. She promised to speak with the stable master. Wheat straw shipments from White Harbor must be prioritized. The list of needs never emptied. It only shifted, like sand poured from one hand to the other. She emerged to faint dawn, the sky turning copper where horizon met the broken tower. Breath steamed from every mouth now. Even the ravens looked puffed and sullen, feathers roused against the Bight. Behind the mews, a line of children stood beneath Shireen Baratheon's shy tutelage, chanting the words carved on wooden planks. Weir, white, wood, woman, winter. Arya watched, heart aching. Two of those children had lost speech altogether after witnessing a White Walker break their father's spine like dry driftwood. Shireen coaxed them with slow syllables, patient as moss. Nearby, Maester Walken mixed elderberry tonic for the fever ward while muttering about dwindling stocks of willow bark. He didn't notice Arya come up behind until she asked how many remained sick. 21 with frost lung, 8 with shell-shock tremors, 2 with infected sword wounds. He feared the infections more. Fever thrived in crowded halls. She directed extra peat blocks to heat the infirmary, then headed for the tower stairs that spiraled to the roof where ravens nested. Halfway up, a messenger nearly barreled into her, cheeks ablaze with more than the climb. He carried a pole-mounted banner of green field, white trout, leaping. Tully colors. Breathless, he stammered that Lady Edmure's wife Rosalind and her newborn son had reached the Queen's Crown refuge. Frey outriders pursued. Edmure himself had escaped the twins, free on parole to gather northern support, but Frey spread tales of desertion. Rosalind begged Stark sanctuary. Arya's jaw hardened. She ordered a relief detail, 24 light horse, 6 bowmen, 3 ravens prepared to launch. She would ride as well. Rosalind might be a Frey by blood, Tully by vow, but terror didn't discriminate. The messenger blinked. Winterfell's lady riding into pursuit. Arya answered with a look. The distance to Queen's Crown was a day's gallop. They'd depart at noon, intercept before dark. She asked him to question the messenger further for any subtlety missed. Frey troop numbers, prisoner status, terrain hazards. He nodded, hurrying after her orders, like a man handed a torch in a moonless grove. She descended to the yard where Asha drilled Ironborn volunteers with short spears. Snowflakes melted on their braids. Each thrust looked vicious, practiced. Asha saw Arya's purpose before words fell. She grinned wolfishly and volunteered her 8 best riders for the rescue. Ser Justin Massey, overhearing, pledged Baratheon lancers. Soon 3 columns stood ready, direwolf, kraken, fiery heart stitched on black. The stable master produced stout garrons, though their ribs pressed canvas camouflage. Arya stroked her mount's neck, whispering names of Sansa's old songs, calming the tremor that always preceded departure. She strapped shadow point across her back, needle at her hip, daggers at each boot, and a small obsidian star in her armband clasp. The gate lifted at midday. They rode out over ice-polished fields, hooves clattering like distant war drums muffled by snow. The sky glared white, sun hid behind bleak gauze. They kept a murderous pace, skirting the tree line south of Long Lake, following a river frozen thick as hammered tin. By dusk pine shadows stretched thin. Owls stared with lamp-bright eyes. Smoke smudged the horizon. A chase fire maybe, or a village smoldering. They found Queen's Ground by starlight, its watchtower half buried in snow, windows sealed with wolfswood fur. The Tully party huddled in the cellar, Rosalind cradling a squalling infant, 3 sworn swords bloodied, 1 woman midwife. Rosalind's face lit with fragile hope when she recognized the direwolf silver pin on Arya's cloak. But hope warped into urgency. Frey outriders just beyond the next ridge, torches flicking like fireflies. No wall, no oil trench here, only a fragile keep and falling dark. Arya scanned the landscape, a frozen mill pond east, an embanked orchard west, and a single choke lane between dry stone cottages. She placed bowmen on cottage roofs, skirmishers in orchard rows, lancers behind mill dam to flank. Asha and Arya dismounted, creeping to the foremost apple trunks as torchlight bobbed closer. The wind carried laughter, Frey laughter. High-pitched, half-drunk, maybe 20 riders, maybe 30, enough to slaughter a handful of defenders, drag a mother and baby back to the twins for Lord Walder's false justice. Arya's pulse beat slow. Muscles warmed, mind cooled. She fingered the new dragonglass star, reminder of silent death. When the riders crested the ridge, their torches wavered in the gust. They hadn't expected resistance. Arya launched the arrow first. Obsidian rarely pierced a living man clean, but the glass entered beneath the first rider's gorget, lodging deep. He grunted and toppled. The others reined in, shouts fracturing their drunken cheer. Asha's whistle gave the signal. Roof archers loosed a volley. 3 more fell. Lancers surged from the mill dam, spearing the flank. The fight ended inside 50 breaths. Freys routed, half dead, the rest galloping into night. One surrendered, arms raised, claiming had only escorted under orders. Arya bound him, seizing his walrus skin gloves as trophy. She'd mail them back to Walder with a note. The North remembers. They spent the rest of the cold black hours fortifying Queen's Crown's watchtower, stoking fires beneath the cellar floor where Rosalind rocked her son. Arya walked the rampart thrice before dawn, mind drifting to John beyond Eastwatch, to Night's Watch miners deep in obsidian caves, to Bran, somewhere far in the Green Dream. She imagined him warging ravens above them, approving. At sunrise, with clouds glowing pale pink, they began the trek home, now escorting the Tully mother on a small sledge. The baby's wails mingled with wind, but Arya found the sound strangely comforting. Proof that breath could still steam in this frozen world. 2 days later, Winterfell's gates closed behind them. Workers paused to watch the newborn carried through. Some crossed hearts at the tiny, swaddled bundle. A she-wolf, birthing hope, they whispered. An omen. Arya allowed herself a rare smile as she guided Rosalind into the infirmary's warmth. Lady Alice Karstark happened to be there, nursing her own month-old daughter. The 2 mothers exchanged looks of fierce tenderness. They sat on adjoining cots, heads bowed together like a pair of starlings, guarding eggs in the same fragile nest. Arya felt a prickle behind her eyes. She quickly blinked away. She turned to overseeing prisoner questioning. The captured Frey swore numbers at the twins were thinning. House Frey split among themselves, Black Walder and Lame Lothar feuding for rule. He offered names of Hideouts in exchange for leniency. Arya recorded every detail for future raids, then locked him in the ice cellar beside barrels of salted venison, to contemplate the chill of northern mercy. That evening, when torchbearers lit the walkways and a red moon rose bloated and low, a lone horn blast echoed from West Watch. Riders approached. Hearts skipped in every chest. Arya hurried to the gatehouse, bow clenched. Silhouette by silhouette entered. Jon, ghost at heel, then a ragged line of black cloaks and a sled dragged by 6 shaggy dogs. On the sled lay a great branching horn banded with ancient bronze. Jon's eyes gleamed with triumph and fear. In a hushed council, he told the tale. Sam Tarly's raven from Old Town had cited scrolls of sealed Valyrian steel chains describing the Horn of Joramun, ancient, buried under ice cliffs. Jon's ranging had traced it along shadowed tunnels, guarded by wights whose flesh clung like tar. They retrieved the horn with losses. 5 men dead, 4 injured, but success might turn winter's tide. The horn, according to legend, could topple the wall, or perhaps unmake the magic binding the others. Melisandre argued such power belonged to the Lord of Light. Stannis eyed it like a sword above his throne. Davos questioned any tool that might break the barrier protecting half the realm. Debate flared, burnt low, flared again. Arya listened. She wondered if any relic could determine destiny without first deciding who would breathe its note. On a hush of later night, she found Jon alone in the Godswood, horn resting across his lap. He recalled Mance Rayder had once failed to sound it, that fire must heat the bronze beyond mortal tolerance. He admitted fear. If the horn shattered the wall spells, what barrier remained? Yet keeping it unused invited envy that could birth betrayal. Arya placed her palm on the cold bronze. She felt faint vibrations, like a muscle twitching in a dying animal. She told Jon every weapon carried will, but wielders wrote meaning. Father had taught them even a boar spear could be mercy if aimed to save a child. Together they buried the horn beneath the heart tree's roots, sealing the ground with melted dragonglass shards shaped into runes by Melisandre's reluctant hand. Fire and ice bound in compromise. A secret kept by weirwood and blood. Winter's day shrank. Solstice arrived. No sunrise, only bruised twilight. Yet within Winterfell sparks of warmth multiplied. The hot springs ran through new channels heating dormitories. A tannery produced fur-lined laminar vests for rangers. The glass garden, once shattered by Theon's folly, was repaired with green-tinted pans and seedlings transplanted from Baraton. Gage perfected a syrup of cloudberry and spiced ale that softened even Stannis' scowl. Children's laughter returned, faint but persistent. One night, Arya joined them in a snowball battle, darting behind piles of slate, pelting Patchface until bells rang like triumphant chimes. She laughed so hard tears froze along her lashes. For a heartbeat, she was a wolf pup racing Bran along ramparts again, chasing nothing but breath. But always the wind carried rumors of a shadow in the shape of a dragon flying over Skagos, of Cersei barricaded in the Red Keep feeding streets of King's Landing to famine, of Dorne sand snakes marshalling ships, of a golden-haired dragon queen crossing the narrow sea with unsullied spears and wildfire in her eyes. Arya knew each rumor like adjusting her grip on a blade. Some were weightless, others heavy. When a raven brought Tyrion's cramped script, news Daenerys Targaryen had landed at Dragonstone and treated with Davos' estranged son Mathos. Stannis cursed but saw advantage. Dragons burned whites, dragons melted ice. Raven after raven flew. Alliances braided in frigid air. Soon a missive came addressed to Lady Arya Stark, bearing seal of 3-headed dragon. It spoke of old debts, of Robert's rebellion, of father's sins. It offered partnership. Daenerys would ride north with 2 dragons once her foothold secured, seeking counsel of the wolf girl who slew another with a needle of night. Arya read the letter thrice. She felt fire rioting those lines, searing parchment. She brought it to Jon. He weighed risk. Dragons might incinerate not only dead but castles and fields. Yet refusal meant facing the Night King's full host alone. In the end, they wrote back. Winterfell would open gates to dragonfire and set tables for peace. If Daenerys came with open hand, a pack of wolves would greet her on the field beneath white branches. Ghost carried that raven into night. His shadow melted against snow. Preparations redoubled. Smiths forged ballista harpoons tipped with dragonglass, to pierce whites riding mammoth bone, not dragons. But men found comfort in contingencies. Ditches widened, ramparts lined with wildfire jars sealed in clay. Arya oversaw archery contests, awarding a carved weirwood leaf to each victor. Every marksmanship improvement might save 10 lives. She practiced stealth at dusk, testing sentries, slinking past unaware, leaving a pine cone in each guard's boot as gentle rebuke. Some laughed, some cursed, but all stood sharper thereafter. In midwinter, a blizzard broke, the sky clearing to reveal swirling curtains of aurora, veils of green and violet rippling higher than dragon wings. The lights danced each night, twisting like weirwood leaves in unseen wind, and old women said it meant spirits of children lost to frost come to watch the living. Arya stared upward often, imagining Rob's laugh flickering in those colors, her father's steady hand steadying the stars. She drew courage there. The others did not strike in force again that month. Instead, they tested perimeters with white packs, ripping at southern villages, leaving hollowed huts. Scouts captured one micro-pack, severed from its master, to study reanimation. Maester Walken cut the sinews and measured ice growth along marrow. His notes filled 3 tomes. They discovered white flesh burned even in absence of flame, if soaked in resin and sprinkled with powdered obsidian. The heat of chemical binding sparked a silent combustion. Pitch mixtures changed accordingly. When the New Year's first moon rose, pale as a blind eye, the ancient horn beneath the heart tree trembled. Arya felt it through boots as she walked the god's wood path. A soft hum, then stillness. She knelt, pressing ear to snow. No vibration. She wondered whether deep ice shifting under faraway glacier had sent a shiver across weirwood roots. A warning, she told John. They checked the burial ground. The dragonglass runes remained, horn undisturbed. Melisandre claimed the Lord of Light stirred. Prophets pointed to comets. Arya sharpened needle. Weeks later, ravens screeched before dawn. Ironborn outriders signaled sails on the horizon, black and red wings flapping above tide, dragons overhead, ships below. Queen Daenerys had reached White Harbor and sailed up the White Knife, escorted by Manderley barges. Her dragons, Drogon and Rhaegal, circled sky like 2 fire siblings chasing frost. Winterfell's garrison stopped to gape as living myth streaked flames across midday clouds, melting pockets of swirling snow into steam halos. The beasts' roars rolled over ramparts, shaking mortar dust from the newly set stones. Arya rode to the outer field with Jon, Asha, Sir Justin, and a banner guard of mixed sigils stitched together. Direwolf quartered with Stag, crowned by Burning Heart. Snow fell light, glimmering as it caught dragonfire overhead. When Daenerys Targaryen dismounted from Drogon's Ridge, her silver-white braid crackled with static. Her violet eyes surveyed castle scars, the ranks of men too awed to cheer. She wore furs dyed charcoal, trimmed with red brocade, yet warmth radiated from her as if embers lived beneath skin. Behind her strode Tyrion Lannister, taller in northern leathers than Arya recalled him in King's Landing silks, face older, eyes no less shrewd. At the queen's back padded a child of perhaps 10, a boy with black curls and golden eyes named Aegon, rumors said, though truth lay murky as river silt. Introductions cut earshort by chill. Daenerys requested parley before hearth. In the great hall, fires the size of carriages blazed. Arya stood at Jon's left. Stannis took seat at opposite flank, expression like sculpted granite reluctant to thaw. Davos and Tyrion exchanged nods, 2 survivors in a world that kept trying to drown them. Pages poured hot wine. Steam devoured stone dust. The queen's words were crisp. She came to join forces, not conquer winter's grave. She offered dragons at the front, unsullied in disciplined columns, Dothraki riders to scour white herds. In return, she asked recognition of her right to the Iron Throne once the night fell. Stannis' eyebrow arched, his claim overshadowed. But before argument could spark, Arya spoke. The living had room for one quarrel at a time. When the dawn came after the long night, they could count thrones like debts. Until then, gold chairs meant as little as titles to the dead. The room fell quiet, save hearth crackling. Daenerys studied Arya, then nodded her chin. Jon echoed nod. Stannis hesitated, fingers flexing on his sword pommel, then exhaled his pride. He would yield his crown for the living's sake, provided the north remained free of South Ron levies. Daenerys agreed. Tyrion penned a provisional compact. Its parchment stamped with direwolf, three-headed dragon, stag, fiery heart. The Pact of Ice and Fire, men later called it, though none dared to hope flame and frost could share a sky. They planned dragons to patrol sky arcs intercepting white storms, unsullied to garrison tunnels beneath the wall, Dothraki to sweep plains east of the King's Road, iron-borne longships to ferry refugees, Stark bowyers to craft dragonglass arrowheads by the thousand, Melisandre to anoint stakes with fire runes. Samwell Tarly returned by chance that same week with dusty tomes on Valyrian glyphs, interpreted pages describing a rite. Hearts of weirwood ground with wildfire poured upon dragonglass to forge heartsbane arrow shafts capable of piercing an utter's core. Tabomat set his apprentices to test the alchemy. The arrows hissed with flame even as snow fell. Word spread. Fire sang in their quivers. Arya found herself walking ramparts with Tyrion, often after midnight, the dwarf sipping fortified herb tea, while she scouted star patterns confirming Bran's old tales. Tyrion asked how many names still sat on her lips. She answered none, then admitted one, her own whenever she doubted she belonged. Tyrion chuckled, said most powerful people wrestled with that same name. He confessed nightmares of Tywin's corpse rotting on a sept floor, eyes accusing. Arya spoke of Walder's snicker echoing in winter winds. They shared a silence, both measuring forgiveness like rare spice. One morning, a raven arrived bearing golden parchment. Cersei Lannister had hanged half the citizens of King's Landing suspected of plotting surrender, demanding her brother's head for mercy. Daenerys' eyes smoldered. Yet Arya counseled restraint. Winters did not thaw by burning southern kings. Tyrion thanked her quietly, though fire still danced in Daenerys' gaze. Dragons proved potent. On patrol, Rhaegal torched an advancing column of whites near the last river, fusing them into a bank of obsidian glass. But Drogon returned from one flight with frost scoring his scales, a wound on his left wing where an ice spear had grazed. The pilot was no mindless thrall. The Night King had thrown the weapon from half a league away. Daenerys dressed the wound in blazing oil. Yet the incident chilled hearts. Dragons were not invincible. Gathering storms quickened. Future dawns arrived pale, weary, and brief. Scouts reported the Night King's host massing across a 3-mile front, beyond the Wolf's Wood, pushing south inside an expanding blizzard. Through the haze, blue fires glowed like a galaxy of dead stars. Sam's estimates numbered them 20,000s. Bodies of centuries of winter casualties lured from ice crypts. Nemorians rode reanimated moose and half-dead bears. Mammoth skeletons hauled frost-iron catapults. And behind them, looming like a frozen mountain, lumbered a creature conjured from legend. A pale giant, twice the size of Mag the Mighty, skull encased in glacial armor fused around the bones. His footfalls shook pine cones loose miles away. Winterfell's defenders braced, trenches reignited. Scorpions loaded with obsidian-tipped bolts thicker than torso. Dragons roared overhead, the beat of their wings stirring snow devils. Unsullied stood rank on rank, shields overlapping slick with resinous pitch, spears poised. Dothraki wound rawhide about Arrax, tips burning with pyre fire. Their painted horses snorted plumes, eyes rolling at the smell of rot on the wind. Northern bannermen lined parapets. Mormonts, Karstarks, Glovers, even a handful of Frey defectors, wearing blank patches in place of their shackled sigils. The Watch brothers joined them in black, sleeves stitched with stark gray. Infirm refugees carried torches. Children huddled in cellars reciting the names of every star they knew, believing to speak them was to keep them burning. On the eve before final clash, Arya slipped into the Godswood alone. She knelt by the heart tree, pressed her brow to rigid bark, whispered all the names she used to recite in rage. They felt distant now, ghosts themselves. She asked the old gods for clarity. To know when vengeance blurred into cruelty, when justice blurred into survival. Snowflakes kissed her lashes. A wind rustled leaves though the air seemed still. She thought she heard Father's voice, Not words but the timbre of calm. She rose, heart beating serene. The dawn came late, dragging a wall of opal fog that swallowed the horizon. Silence spread, thick and suffocating. Then, a single horn blast arose from the northern watch. Not of man or wall or ranger, but a deep, haunting note tremoring through marrow. Arya recognized it, the horn of winter, though buried. But she felt it now vibrating underfoot, a distant resonance. The ground bristled with frost veins. Jon hurried across ramparts, eyes wide. He felt it too. Ghost howled. Weirwood branches shuddered. And from the anemia of white, the Night King emerged astride an undead wyvern, wings beating tattered holes in the storm wall. 5 generals rode beside on skeletal steeds, their icy armor striated like raw quartz. Behind them swarmed the host, a tide of gray flesh and cobalt flame. At their flanks lumbered the frost giant, its roar a canyon of shattering ice. Arya breathed once, tasting pine smoke and iron snow. She drew shadow point. Its black surface drank the dawn's pallid light. Jon raised Longclaw. Daenerys swung astride Drogon, fire licking the beast's small dado. Stannis walked to the parapet, Lightbringer blazing scarlet, voice roaring commands that cut across courtyard like blades. Asha smacked axe to shield. Tyrion climbed the gatehouse, eyes wary but bright. Then Winterfell's gates opened, and the last war began. They met on the field outside the trenches, a blur of flame, ice, obsidian, and screams. Dragons wheeled overhead, bathing ranks in fire. Whites turned to ash, yet firestorms carved too narrow a swath compared to the endless mass. The frost giant swung a club of blue crystal, swatting horsemen like gnats. Stannis led a charge of Baratheon knights doused in lamp oil, their swords alight. They slashed at the giant's knees, hacking glacial ligament until one leg buckled. Magnetized by pain, the giant crushed half the company beneath collapsing stone body, but screamed again when dragon glass ballistae punched holes in its ribcage. It crashed to one knee. Druids of the Children of the Forest, 5 survivors living in exile, stepped from weirwood shadows and buried obsidian spikes in its heart. The giant keened, then shattered into a blizzard of razor shards. Meanwhile, Arya fought at the base of the curtain wall. Every thrust of shadow point burst a white into snow dust. Needle flicked between cracks in breastplates, severing joints. She moved like water dancing amid ice statues that shattered at her touch. Yet exhaustion nibbled. Another advanced, blade of frosted light singing through air. She parried with shadow point. Sparks of cold fire spat. The other pressed heavy. She bent knee to slide under its guard, stabbed upward. Miss. It slammed her shoulder. Frostbite flash burning across nerve. She staggered. Before second blow landed, a roaring blur tackled the other. Ghost. The wolf's jaws locked on crystalline throat, weight knocking opponent onto burning pitch. Flames licked. Ice hissed. The other convulsed, spitting shards. Ghost leapt clear as Arya drove Shadowpoint through its heart. The corpse crystallized, then crumbled, releasing a screech like ice, shearing from a calving glacier. Arya pulled the wolf close, grateful. Above, a battle of kings unfolded. The Night King stooped on wyvern wings to clash with Drogon, spear of frozen starlight clutched in gaunt hand. Daenerys wheeled, flames scorching the air with solar ferocity. Spear met fire, releasing storms of steam that quaked the field. Rhaegal soared beside, but 2 white peregrines made of bone and leather tore at his wing membranes. He spun away, shrieking. The Night King hurled his spear. It grazed Rhaegal's neck, blistering scales with frost. The dragon fled to higher thermals. Wind snapped as Drogon dove. Daenerys guiding, jaw clenched. Flame spewed at the Night King, but he banked. Spear raised for a killing strike. And in that heartbeat, Jon understood his place. He sprinted across corpses, across sludge, climbed the giant's shattered thigh, launched himself onto the wyvern's tail as it swooped overhead. Longclaw's Valyrian steel dug into dead flesh. Jon clung, ascended the spine. The Night King twisted, eyes burning apathy. He prepared another spear, closer. Jon hauled himself to the saddle ridge, swinging long claw at sinew strands, anchoring undead wings. The blade severed cords, wyvern bucked. The Night King slammed spear butt into Jon's chest, breath shot away, ribs cracking. Jon held the spear shaft, anchored by hatred. The weapon pulsed with frost. His gloves crisped to ice. Below, Arya surged to the tower top, scale mail clinking. She scanned sky, saw brother hanging from wyvern. Heart thundered. She sprinted along parapet, past ballista crew reloading obsidian harpoon. Without orders, she leapt onto the frame, grabbed coil lever, pivoted massive arm. Wind and adrenaline drowned the world. She aimed not at the wyvern, but at the Night King himself. A silhouette of sapphire atop blackened saddle. Harpoon tip glistened with dragonglass shards hammered to Valyrian steel core. Crew shouted at her madness. She ignored. She breathed once, saw Jon's dark cloak whipping, saw the frozen spear raised to skewer him. She loosed. The harpoon sang, slicing wind. Wyvern jerked. The Night King glimpsed peril too late. The bolt pierced his left shoulder, shattering crystal pauldron, punching through ribs. He reeled, spear veering off. Jon twisted free, sliding along spine but grappling again at ridge. The wyvern screeched, wings faltering. Ice fractures spread across the Night King's torso from wound, spidering like lightning on black lake. He gripped harpoon shaft, tried wrenching free. His eyes blazed brighter, frost storms coiling around him. Drogon seized the moment. Fire poured, a river of molten jade. Heat met frost at the wound, steam shrieked. The Night King howled, a sound like sheet metal singing, and his body exploded in a bloom of snow crystals that burst outward then evaporated, leaving only spiraling embers of dying magic. The wyvern convulsed, lost guidance, tumbled earthward. Jon leapt, arms flailing. Drogon veered, massive wing catching him mid-fall, throwing him toward a snowbank near Winterfell's broken well. He crashed, rolled, gasped, alive, with their master gone. The remaining others recoiled, their forms wavering ethereal. Some shattered spontaneously, others retreated hissing. The wights collapsed mid-stride. Strings severed. Silence thundered after the cacophony. No hiss, no scream, only the rattle of weapons clattering from lifeless hands. A snowflake drifted past Arya's vision. She tracked its slow fall, expecting it to freeze upon stone, but instead it melted on residual heat of smoldering pitch. Winter's breath felt softer, as though the sky had exhaled a long-held curse. Across muddy ground men began to cheer. First uncertain, one voice soaring above stillness, then many rising to roar. Daenerys circled once on Drogon, triumphant flame dancing in his nostrils, then landed beyond the trenches. Wolf banners lifted, stag banners raised, dragon wings unfurled. Melisandre stepped from charred trench, eyes bright crimson, whispering prayer. Arya descended the tower on trembling legs. She found Jon pushing himself to sitting, coughing blood specks into snow. She knelt, pressed gloved hand to his cheek. Ghost whined, licking his ear. Jon's eyes opened, glazed but focused. She smiled. Later, the healer stitched ribs. Salve burns, set splints. But casualty tides were mercifully shallow compared to fears. 20 dragon scale burnt unsullied, 40 northern spears, a dozen Dothraki. 3 watch brothers among the dead. The frost giant's shards melted to reveal bones of human children fused into ridges. A horror, buried in pyre. The dark horn under Hearttree fell silent, though when Arya visited, she swore the tree's face looked relieved. The engraved mouth softened. In the weeks that followed, white stragglers were hunted and burned. Rhaegal's neck healed, scales regrowing. Ambassadors from River Run arrived, pledging Tully banners. Iron Island's longships anchored, flying Asha's kraken, entwined with dire wolf. Word of the Night King's fall raced south faster than ravens. At King's Landing, Cersei's walls, no longer needed against winter, found themselves surrounded by famine mobs chanting for relief. Tyrion received raven after raven. One reported Cersei's final act, igniting hidden wildfire. The old capital burned emerald for 3 days. Survivors flooded Stormlands. A new realm would need new rulers, but Winterfell's Hall refused to hold another war council. They let the question rest. One afternoon, sun glowing pale gold through thinning clouds, Arya walked the battlefield where snow melted into rivulets. Frost crocuses pushed white petals through churned mud. She knelt, traced one petal, marveled at its fragility. Jon approached, sling on arm, cloak stirring gently. He carried 2 swords, Longclaw and Shadowpoint. He offered Shadowpoint back. She declined, pressing it to his palms. Valyrian steel, in dragonglass lamination, should shade the Lord Commander's shadow. She would keep needle. It was enough. Ghost padded ahead toward Godswood. Arya followed until they stood beneath weeping red limbs. The wind murmured, as if the tree exhaled thanks. Arya closed her eyes and whispered names again, not as curses but as farewells. She felt weight lift. Heavy rock that had anchored her resolve now settling into quiet memory. Jon spoke. Winter would linger, but its heart had broken. Crops would still fail, rivers freeze, but humanity would face ice on equal terms now. He believed in planting, in stoicism, in rebuilding. She believed in motion. She told him so. When roads thawed, she might ride south to ensure Walder Frey paid the last debt. Might sail east to Bravos to light a candle for Jaqen's many faces. Might cross deserts to taste what songs slaves sang when dragons freed them. Jon laughed, soft. Said the pack survives by spreading as well as clustering. Wolves teach their cubs to hunt alone. He would keep Winterfell. She would carry Winterfell in her steps. He asked only that she return whenever the heart tree's leaves turned redder than blood. She promised. They stood a while, listening to living ravens chorus overhead. Then she lifted her hood, traced father's name on bark with glove tip, and walked back through the broken arch now mended, across courtyard where children fenced with wooden swords, past smithy where Tabo hammered glass into new shapes. Pickaxes for mines, knives for kitchens. She walked beyond gate into sunlight bright enough to hurt, past trenches now gardens, past scorched yard where a single blade of green grass dared to sprout amid ash. Embers her Garin stamped impatient by hitch post. She stroked his mane, swung into saddle. As she rode through Winterfell's outer village, cotters bowed. Baker waved flower-white hand. 2 boys practicing spear stances paused to salute. She inclined her head, not lady, not queen, but wolf. At the ridge, she turned once. Winterfell's towers speared sky black-gray against brightening blue. Dragon shapes circled far behind, their riders etching new stories in clouds. She breathed crisp air that carried no stench of rot now, only wood smoke and the faint sweetness of thaw. She nudged embers into trot, then canter, then full gallop, snow spraying behind like silver water. The road unfurled beneath, open and unwritten, and every hoofbeat echoed a promise. The North remembers, but the North also dreams, and a wolf set loose on the wild road could carry that dream wherever horizons dared unfold.